Chapter 321. The faces of the experts of the four great clans changed when they sensed this unstoppable and terrifying aura. Where did these two top-notch experts come from? Such an expert was definitely at the legendary level. They could even be said to be on the same level as the unrivaled expert, Ling Xiaozui. The people present quickly weighed the situation and came to a conclusion. With this aura alone, even if they were to gang up on him, they would never be his opponent. In the face of an absolute gap in ability, the human wave tactic was not enough to pose a threat. What should he do about this? The young master in white walked forward with a cold expression and said faintly, "Who is Yun Yang?" He was looking for Yun Yang. He was relieved. However, why did he have to injure Dong Tianling if he was looking for Yun Yang? Yun Yang had expected the other party to come. He had been showing himself for a long period of time these few days, just to wait for these two people to come. However, he had never thought that this so-called young lord would appear in front of him in such a manner. Because of this, the two of them were in the position of mortal enemies. Once he appeared and struck, he had beaten Dong Tianling to the brink of death. There was no room for turning the situation around. All of Yun Yang's previous preparations, plans, and countermeasures were suddenly in vain. In Yun Yang's estimation, this young lord was not from this world. No matter how strong he was, he had the persistence and restraint of a noble family. As long as there was no concrete evidence, such as proving that Yun Yang was supreme wind, or exposing the true colors of the two girls, he would not confront him head-on, at least for now. The other party might take a roundabout way to establish a friendship, gradually causing both parties to cross paths. It was not that this person could not kill the two girls in one fell swoop, but that he had other plans. However, it was also evident that he was patient. If the other party had such intentions, Yun Yang could use this as a pretext to deal with him. However, the turn of events at this moment had caused all his previous plans to be in vain. At the same time, Yun Yang was enraged. So what if you're strong? First, you severely injured Dong Tianling, and now you're here to pick a fight. Isn't it obvious that you're bullying us for being weak? We have the elites and experts of the four noble families here, as well as Bai Yixue, Lao Mei, and Fang Mafei. If we fight with all of our forces, we might still have a chance of survival. Yun Yang walked forward with a solemn expression and squatted down to check on Dong Tianling and Old Pang's injuries. He was immediately relieved. The two of them appeared to be heavily injured, but in reality, their lives were not in danger. It seemed that this young master had held back when he attacked. In other words, the situation had not escalated to the extreme yet. There was still room to turn back. Yun Yang quickly fed medicine to both of them to stabilize their injuries, and asked the Dong family's experts to carry them aside. Only then did he stand up, his gaze focused on the young master in white. The young master in white watched with interest as Yun Yang worked hard to save the others. He stood with his arms behind his back, not urging Yun Yang at all. After all, no one in the residence of Yun was a threat to him. Moreover, he had his guards by his side. If the other party made any sudden moves, he could destroy them with a flip of his hand. Since he had the capital, it was natural for him to understand the other party's temperament and tactics first. "May I know who you are?" Yun Yang stood up straight, his expression as dark as still water. His eyes stared at the young lord in white as he said coldly, "Who are you to destroy my house and injure my brother? Why did you do this? What right do you have to do this?" Yun Yang was dressed in purple as usual, standing tall and straight, as if he was out of this world. Standing opposite the young lord in white, they were equally matched, and did not seem to be at a disadvantage. Moreover, that overbearing and eerie aura was even stronger than his opponent's by a notch. Yun Yang's demeanor at this moment made the experts of the four noble families shudder. Just based on his sense of responsibility and aura, when facing an invincible enemy, he was definitely not an ordinary person. "Are you Yun Yang?" The young lord in white looked at Yun Yang, and asked even though he already knew the answer. He did not answer Yun Yang's question but asked in return. It was obvious that he did not want to be in a position where he would be questioned. "I am Yun Yang." Yun Yang did not think it was a big deal, and did not dwell on it. It would be a great joke if answering a question would weaken his aura. If it were true, It would only prove that he was too fragile. You haven't answered my question, Yin Yang said in an even more domineering tone after answering the question. Courtesy demands reciprocity. This young lord will answer your first question first. My surname is Lei. Even if I tell you, you won't know, the young lord of the Lei family said faintly. As for why I did this, you should ask your brother what he did. Lei surname? Yin Yang immediately thought of the contents of his sixth brother Supreme Thunder's will. Bound of Universe Lei family. Yin Yang had already thought that this young man in front of him was so powerful. In the secular world of Tianxian continent, it was impossible for someone so old to have such a strong cultivation base. He must be a visitor from another realm. Since this young man's surname was also Lei, could he be from the Lei family of the Bound of Universe? Should I ask him? Did he offend you? Yun Yang turned to look at Dong Tianling and had an idea. Yun Yang already had a good understanding of this person's character when they first met. Now he had a deep understanding of this person. If it were not for their previous encounter, it would not be a glorious thing to have such a friend. This fellow was definitely a despicable person. There should be no one better than him in this world when it came to what he could do and what he could say to offend someone. This brother of yours speaks and acts. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to save some face for you, young Master Yin, it wouldn't be too much even if I killed him on the spot, the young master of the Lei family said casually. What happened now is just a light punishment. Just a light punishment? Just a light punishment was enough to beat someone half to death? Also, what did he mean by killing him on the spot is not too much mean? Who do you think you are, the king of heaven? The experts of the four noble families were enraged. Coincidentally, old Pang woke up at this time. Everyone's gaze shifted over and focused on the person who had just woken up. What exactly is going on? One of the experts from the Dong clan asked. Old Pang looked ashamed and averted his gaze. After a while he let out a long sigh. To old Pang, thinking of his young master's insults, even if he were to be killed on the spot, he would feel that it was only right. It was indeed a little too vicious. Anyone who heard of it would be disgusted, let alone the person who was directly involved. Even an ordinary person would be enraged by this, let alone such a supreme expert. Looking at old Pang's reaction, everyone immediately understood the gist of the matter. It must be Dong Tianling who had started the trouble and had greatly offended the other party. That was why he was severely injured by the other party and even came looking for them. Do I still need to tell you the whole story now? The young lord of the Lei family said with a smile. Yin Yang sighed and said, even if there was a reason for this, your actions were really sigh. His tone softened instantly. Great young Master Yin was a man who knew how to adapt to the situation. He was filled with anger and wanted to fight without a care. But he was forced by the situation. The experts of the four noble families were not a threat at all, especially the other three families other than the Dong family. Once the situation went south, they would most likely have to protect themselves and stay out of trouble. The so-called friendly alliance was insignificant in a life and death situation. If they really fought, they would definitely lose. Now that the situation had changed, it was the direction that Yin Yang was most happy to see. The young lord of the Lei family smiled inwardly. This method was indeed feasible. On the other side, old Pang told the whole story in detail in a low voice. Everyone looked at each other as they listened. This matter was really, especially when old Pang repeated what Dong Tianling had said. The person involved was right here, so there was no way for him to edit it out. He could only recite what he had said. When the crowd heard this, they could see black lines on their foreheads and cold sweat all over their bodies. To be able to say such things and be beaten up was not a big deal at all. If the person involved was himself, with such a strong ability, he would have killed him with a single blow. Yin Yang's attitude changed immediately as he sighed. Dong family, quickly carry your young master back to recuperate. Sigh, this matter is so embarrassing and shameful. He then turned to the young lord of the Lei family. Brother Lei, thank you so much. Thank you for giving me some face and showing mercy to me at this time of rage. This matter is really, alright. We can be considered to have gotten to know each other through Discord. Come. The misunderstanding has been resolved. Brother Lei has even come personally. That means that you think highly of me and treat me as a friend. Just because you've given me face, you must stay for a drink." Without waiting for young Master Lei to speak, Yun Yang began to make arrangements. "Lao Mei, go prepare some dishes and wine. Tonight, I want to drink with Brother Lei until we're drunk." He laughed and said, "As the saying goes, fate brings us together from thousands of miles away. A cup of wine can dissolve all enmity. Brother Lei, you must drink this cup of wine." This turn of events made the young master in white stunned for a moment. This was his goal, but he did not expect it to be achieved so easily. The experts of the four noble families secretly nodded in approval at Yun Yang's actions. This young Master Yun was really something. When he was unaware of the truth, he was neither servile nor overbearing when facing such a superb expert. He knew when to advance and when to retreat, and was even willing to take the risk of dying together with him. When he understood the whole story and the truth of the matter, his attitude changed drastically, turning a big issue into a small one, and a small one into nothing with just a few words. There was no trace of reluctance in his tone. This was the means of an ambitious man who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. He was definitely someone who would achieve great things. Moreover, everyone understood very well that they would definitely not be able to defeat this young Master Lei and his guards. Since there was a chance to turn an enemy into a friend, why wouldn't he do it? Perhaps they could even obtain a strong alliance in the future. Young Master Yun is indeed a talent. It's not without reason that he could make this family's young master his bosom friend, and even willingly become his follower. The experts of the four noble families were all praising him in their hearts. "Look at young Master Yun, then look at our family's talent. They really can't be compared. How did the saying go again? Comparisons are odious, comparisons are odious." What a wise saying. It was especially so for the Dong family. Looking at Yun Yang, who had managed to turn the situation around with just a few words, then looking at their young master, who had been beaten half to death for causing trouble, they felt that it would be better to live a piece of barbecued pork than to live him. What a difference! This young Master Lei was inwardly disdainful. "It's only because I have a motive that I can give you face. Yun Yang, don't think that you're so great. Actually, in my heart you're nothing, just a piece of trash." However, his face was filled with a warm smile as he said, "Brother Yun is too courteous. It's just that this young brother has broken Brother Yun's door in a fit of anger just now. I'm really sorry." Chapter 322. Compared to a friend, what's a door worth? Yun Yang guffawed and said brightly, "If Brother Lei still has such thoughts, aren't you looking down on your young brother?" As he spoke, he turned around and said, "All of you stay here to take care of the mystical beasts. I'll go talk to Brother Lei first." Then he secretly gave the experts of the four great clans a look. Everyone understood immediately. They had yet to establish their friendship, and it was only a turning point. Naturally, the priority was to prevent young Master Lei from seeing Dong Tianling. What if he was enraged again? If Dong Tianling did not know what was good for him, and cursed again when he woke up, it would be terrible. Furthermore, Yun Yang helping the four noble families to train the mystical beast cubs was an extremely secretive matter. No matter how high young Master Lei's cultivation base was, he had to keep this a secret if he could. Young Master Yin was indeed thorough in his considerations. He had considered every aspect without missing out. "Please, please, Brother Lei." Both of them walked hand in hand affectionately. "May I ask, where did Brother Lei come from? Just based on Brother Lei's cultivation base, you're already beyond the scope of an ordinary cultivator." Yun Yang seemed to be trying to figure out the other person's background. Young Master Lei smiled. "Brother Yin has sharp eyes, but our family has never been in the secular world. I'm afraid Brother Yin wouldn't know even if I told you." Yun Yang was suddenly enlightened. "Brother Lei is indeed an expert from a reclusive family. No wonder you're so skilled. Speaking of which, Brother Lei's cultivation base really makes me gasp in awe." Young Master Lei smiled reservedly. "Brother Yin is too courteous. It's just a family heirloom that I've learned by chance. It's just a small trick not worth mentioning." Yun Yang poured tea and smiled. "But I wonder what Brother Lei's purpose of stepping into the secular world this time?" Of course, if it's not convenient for me to say it, just take it that I'm being rude. How can we speak so deeply when we're just acquaintances? But if there's anything I can help with, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm considered to have some ability in the Empire of Yutong. He smiled faintly and said, since Brother Lei has given me face, I, Yin Yang, should return the favor. If I can help Brother Lei solve some troubles or small problems, this Yin will not shirk from my duty, and will definitely not hesitate. Young Master Lei sighed softly. His face was filled with emotions as he said, Brother Yin, you're straightforward with your words. I won't hide it from you either. Initially, our family rarely gets involved in the mortal world, and we wouldn't have sent me out for no reason. However, we've really encountered something this time, and it's making me feel rather troubled. This time, I came back to the world of martial arts because I had no other choice. Young Master Lei looked melancholic. Yin Yang took a look. This guy actually wants to compete with me in acting? He had found the right person. Let's see whose acting skills are better, and who will be the best actor. Yin Yang sighed as well. 9 out of 10 things in this world don't go according to one's wishes. However, I never expected that a huge family like Brother Lei, with such a superb cultivation base, would actually have troubles. I'm afraid this kind of trouble isn't something that can be solved by an ordinary person. This was a very normal reaction. I said I'm willing to help you, but I'm just an ordinary person. Don't expect me to do everything. My ability is very limited. Young Master Lei sighed leisurely. That might not be the case. Immortals are the achievements of mortals after all. Naturally, they have a lot of troubles that mortals have. It's not that you can be free of worries just because you're capable. Yin Yang vomited in his heart and agreed. Brother Lei's words are indeed wise. Mortals all say that immortals are good, but even immortals sometimes think about mortals. Here's what happened. Young Master Lei heaved a long sigh. There's nothing much to say about this matter. After all, one shouldn't wash one's dirty linen in public. However, Brother Yin is a friend. It's all right to say it. I'm all ears. I'm already 25 years old this year. Initially, my family had arranged a marriage. I was planning to get married this year. However, I didn't expect my fiancé to be dissatisfied with the family's arrangement and ran away. Young Master Lei said in melancholy. Yin Yang's face was full of concern. How could this happen? With Brother Lei's character, appearance, family background, and martial arts skills. How could there be such a silly girl? Young Master Lei smiled bitterly. My fiancé has never seen me in person. This, Yin Yang sighed with regret. Sigh, there are many misunderstandings caused by ignorance. Otherwise, the world would be much less troubled. I believe that if sister-in-law had met Brother Lei, she wouldn't be like this. I believe that there's hardly any girl in this world who can reject a Mr. Right like Brother Lei. Young Master Lei blushed slightly. Brother Yin, you flatter me. Yin Yang vomited in his heart. This bastard could actually pretend to blush. What an actor! He had finally met his match today. Although I consider myself to be good-looking, compared to Brother Yin, I'm still far from it. Indeed, there's always someone better than you, Young Master Lei said. Yin Yang blushed immediately and said in embarrassment, this young brother is only presentable in terms of appearance. How can I be compared to Brother Lei in other aspects? The difference is like heaven and earth. We can't even be mentioned in the same breath. Can you perform a blushing act? I'll perform a blushing act for you. Do you think I'm afraid of you if I show off my acting skills? The corners of Young Master Lei's lips twitched slightly. I'm being humble to you. Do you really think that your appearance is so outstanding? Do you really think that a man can only rely on his appearance? I'm not a man who lives off a woman. Brother Yin and I hit it off the moment we met. As the saying goes, white hair is as new. That's why I'm telling you about this. Speaking of which, this matter is really embarrassing. Young Master Lei's gaze focused on Yin Yang's face as he said, however, this matter concerns the reputation of the Lei family and the friendship between the previous generation. I have no choice but to come out of the mountains to look for my fiancée. I hope that she can understand me after seeing me. I, Lei Dongtian, am not a shallow person, nor am I a cruel and popinjay young master of an aristocratic family. Yin Yang praised. Brother Lei's action is what a real man should do. You're broad-minded, just like the boundless ocean. Lei Dongtian said. This can't be helped. After all, this is a marriage set by the parents of both parties. As their children, I have to fulfill the wishes of the elders. Yunyang said. I understand what Brother Lei means. Rest assured, as long as you give me the portrait of your future wife, as long as she's still within the borders of Yutong, this young brother will definitely help you find her without hesitation. This was still the attitude of a normal person. Although Lei Dongtian's ability and cultivation base were astounding, there were only two people, a master and a servant. The manpower was limited. Naturally, the more people and the stronger the ability, the easier it would be to find someone. This was something that Yunyang could do. As for the heir of Marquis of Heavenly Clouds, it would undoubtedly be a great thing if he could build a relationship with Lei Dongtian through this matter. Thank you so much for your help, Brother Yun, Lei Dongtian said, touched. It's nothing. There's no need for Brother Lei to be so courteous. Yunyang patted his chest and said, just like what Brother Lei has said, you and I are like old friends at first sight. For a real man, it is still a trivial matter to go through a mountain of swords and a sea of flames for a friend. Finding traces of people is just a trivial matter. It is nothing to mention, absolutely nothing. There's a portrait of my fiancé here. Lei Dongtian's face revealed a hint of playfulness. Quick, let me have a look. This young brother is looking forward to seeing your future wife's face, Yunyang urged. Lei Dongtian nodded and took out a scroll from his robe. It unfolded slowly. On the screen, a lady dressed in white stood under a heavenly fragrant flower tree. Behind her were flowers that bloomed brilliantly. However, the colorful flowers could not be noticed in front of her. Everyone's eyes and attention were focused on that beautiful face. Her beauty was unparalleled. She exuded the playfulness and naivety of a young lady amidst her dignified demeanor. Anyone who saw her could not help but like her. First, they liked her, wanted to protect her, wanted to take care of her, and were afraid that she would be wronged. Then it was a deep infatuation. How could there be such a beauty in this world? Although Yunyang was mentally prepared, he still felt suffocated when he saw the portrait. His mind was filled with breathtaking thoughts. There were only 8 words lingering in his mind. Unparalleled beauty, unparalleled beauty. This was only a portrait. Just from this portrait alone, it was not difficult to imagine how breathtaking she would be if she were to see her in person. How beautiful! Yunyang praised sincerely. Her looks are only passable. Tiantang is a land of outstanding talents. How could she possibly be worthy of Brother Yun's attention? Lei Dongtian was genuinely surprised. Looking at the undisguised awe and admiration in Yunyang's eyes, Lei Dongtian was truly confused. Was it not said that Ji Lingxi had interacted with this fellow for a short period of time? Why was this fellow not reacting strangely at all? Now that he was monitoring Yunyang's heartbeat and pulse, he could feel it even if a strand of his hair moved, or a strand of hair stood on end. Why did this child act like he had never seen her before? Could it be that the information was wrong? Lei Dongtian was dumbfounded. This situation was not right. Should he not be putting on an act, saying that he knew the lady in the portrait, but that they had not contacted each other for some time? He thought that he had calculated everything and predicted Yunyang's possible reactions. But what he did not expect was that Yunyang had never seen Ji Lingxi's real face. Therefore, the attack that he had unleashed as a heavy hammer was completely useless in front of Yunyang. My fiancé's name is Ji Lingxi. Lei Dongtian could not help but remind him. Yunyang praised. The body has no wings of the phoenix, but the heart is connected. What a good name. What a good name indeed. Lei Dongtian could not help but scratch his head. This child before him was not putting on an act at all. The script was not right. Chapter 323. The show was already halfway through, but the other parties suddenly stopped taking the bait, or rather, changed the direction of the plot. What was going on? The black-robed elder had his head lowered, his expression hidden. If he were to lift his head, one would definitely see that he was equally bewildered. Ji Lingxi had stayed in Tiantang City and had a lot of contact with Yunyang. There was no doubt about it, no doubt about it. However, Ji Lingxi had disguised herself and even changed her name at that time. At this point, they did not know the truth. Firstly, they had yet to contact Ji Lingxi's sisters, and secondly, even if they did, Ji Lingxi might not tell them the truth. Furthermore, what they knew was only limited to the time when Ji Lingxi had disguised herself and met Yun Yang under an alias. As for Ji Lingxi's family, they were even more unscrupulous. Lei Dongtian's original intention was not wrong. A woman would disguise herself for the one she liked. How could a woman not show her most beautiful side when she was with the one she liked? However, coincidentally, Ji Lingxi did not have the time to do so. If it were not for Ji Lingfeng's will, Yun Yang would not have known that Ji Lingxi was Ji Lingxi. Although Ji Lingxi had feelings for Yun Yang had always put himself in the position of a father and brother. He really did not treat Ji Lingxi as his sweetheart, at least not the kind of sweetheart that Lei Dongtian thought. Therefore, from Lei Dongtian's point of view, perhaps both of them did not have that kind of relationship. Or perhaps he was in a situation where he was having a hot head shaving. However, the show was already halfway through. It had to continue no matter what. Brother Yun is already aware of the cause of this matter, but the subsequent part is the main cause of my current worry. Actually, with our efforts, we have found her. Lei Dongtian sighed. However, at the crucial moment when we were about to meet, someone else came out and caused all our plans to fail. Yun Yang was surprised. Brother Lei, forgive this young brother for not being able to understand the situation that you're talking about. The aura and grace that you've displayed just now is already at the pinnacle of this world. Who could actually interfere in Brother Lei's matters? Furthermore, it could even frustrate Brother Lei. This is terrifying to think about. It was the reaction of a normal person again. A ruthless character who could make Lei Dongtian return in defeat without accomplishing anything was not someone a small character like Yun Yang could shake. Not only was it terrifying to think about it, it was terrifying to even think about it. It's our fault for not being on guard. To think that something like this would happen, Lei Dongtian said. But after we asked around, we found out that the person who intervened in this matter had an extraordinary background. Yun Yang asked cautiously, "May I ask who that person is?" This person's strength is not ordinary. He also has a mysterious technique that allows him to turn his body into a tornado. This person used this technique to take my fiancé away. However, as to how strong this person really is, I don't know. Lei Dongtian said proudly. Yun Yang was shocked, actually standing up. It's Lord Supreme Wind? Lei Dongtian said. So Brother Yun knows Lord Supreme Wind too. Yun Yang chuckled bitterly, his expression blank as he said, "As a man of Yutong, how can I, Yun Yang, not know Lord Supreme Wind? Brother Lei, I'm afraid that this matter of yours will be troublesome." Lei Dongtian said. "Oh, why would it be troublesome? With Brother Yun's identity as the son of Marquis of Heavenly Clouds, it shouldn't be difficult to find a person, right? If it's just looking for a person, it wouldn't be difficult to find 10 or 100 people, let alone one person. However, if this matter involves Lord Supreme Wind, then it's a huge problem." Yun Yang took a deep breath, his expression solemn, and his voice became so weak that it could not be heard. Even if Lord Supreme Wind is Yutong's hero, he can't simply interfere in other people's families' affairs. Is it reasonable for him to snatch someone else's wife? Lei Dongtian put on a displeased expression. No matter where this matter goes, it will always be the same. Yun Yang looked like he was having a toothache as he said, This matter, Sai. Brother Lei might not know about it." Lei Dongtian said, "Please enlighten me, Brother Yin." Yun Yang's expression was extremely troubled as he said, "Brother Lei Yu." He raised his head and looked at Lei Dongtian. His gaze was filled with confusion. Lei Dongtian's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that there was an inside story to this matter? Did this Lord Supreme Wind have other entanglements? He looked at Yun Yang with a straight face and suddenly bowed deeply, saying, "Brother Yin, I beg of you, please enlighten me." Yun Yang's expression was solemn, as he took in deep breaths. After a long while he seemed to have made up his mind and said, "Brother Lei, although you and I feel like old friends at first sight, this matter is too important." Lei Dongtian said seriously, "If it wasn't important, I wouldn't have come looking for Brother Yun's help so hastily." Yun Yang pondered and said, This is Brother Lei's first time leaving your sect and stepping into the world, isn't it? That's right. Lei Dongtian said. Not only is it Brother Lei's first time leaving your sect, but you've also pursued me all the way to Tiantang City. Am I right? Yin Yang asked. Indeed. Lei Dongtian knew that Yin Yang must have an ulterior motive, so he answered readily. He wanted to see what else Yin Yang had to say, whether he could use the word justice. This also means that after Brother Lei left home, and before meeting me, you haven't met anyone from other countries? Yin Yang continued to ask seriously. Yes, I haven't. Young Master Lei seemed to vaguely understand the true meaning of Yin Yang's words, but it was not that clear. The reason is simple. It's probably. Yin Yang scratched his head in annoyance and said, But I'm still not sure if I should tell you. Brother Lei, this matter concerns the fate of the Empire of Yutong. At the same time, it's a secret that only a few people in the Empire of Yutong know. If I tell you and leak it out, the consequences will be unimaginable. Lei Dongtian said in a low voice, Don't worry, Brother Yin. I'm not a person of this worldly world. The rise and fall of countries in this world are nothing in my eyes. His eyes flickered as he said, Since it's a big secret that only a few people in the Empire of Yutong know about, then Brother Yin. Yin Yang smiled proudly and said, My father, the Marquis of Heavenly Clouds. Although he's only a marquis in name, in fact, he's the blood brother of His Majesty the Emperor. Lei Dongtian's eyes widened in surprise as he said, Forgive me for my rudeness. So Brother Yin is a noble descendant. Yin Yang's expression immediately turned dejected as he said faintly, Brother Lei thinks too highly of me. My father is only the illegitimate son of the late emperor. His identity is not something that can be revealed in public. Lei Dongtian nodded and said, Don't worry, Brother Yin. Just because you're willing to tell me the truth about your birth, I, Lei Dongtian, will be your lifelong friend. Lei Dongtian's promise was not an ordinary one. One should know that his ability was almost at the level of Ling Xiaozui. He was definitely a Tianxian pinnacle master. With such a backing, Yin Yang would be much more confident. Lei Dongtian felt that it was more than enough. Regarding the birth that Yin Yang had mentioned, Lei Dongtian felt that it would not be a lie. Although he had not inquired about it, there must be a lot of people who knew about it. Yin Yang could not lie to him about this. However, he was still hesitant about revealing the 9 Supremes, when he had even revealed such a secret of his birth. This matter was worth considering. Lei Dongtian's promise was not just for show. If Yin Yang really had nothing to do with Supreme Wind or Jilingxi, then it would be necessary to give Yin Yang some benefits. After all, Yin Yang's manner of speech, demeanor, and image were all top-notch, and Lei Dongtian was very fond of them. A person's appearance was outstanding, and his good looks were always advantageous, wherever he went. This was yet another proof. Brother Lei, I will only say this once. Yin Yang said, Out of my mouth into your ears. Lei Dongtian nodded seriously. He could not help but feel nervous about Yin Yang's seriousness. He said in a low voice, Don't worry, no one else will know about this. Just as Yin Yang opened his mouth to speak, he suddenly looked dejected again. After a moment of silence he said, Forget it, Brother Lei. This young brother has let you down. This matter, Lei Dongtian was stunned. F***ck, your father has already taken off my pants. And this is what you show me? He asked hurriedly. Brother Yin, if you still have any concerns, why don't you say it? Yin Yang shook his head. No, I can't say it. Lei Dongtian frowned. Suddenly, he stretched out his right hand and wiped the ring on his left hand. Then, a large piece of 7-colored jade appeared out of thin air in his hand. As soon as this palm-sized mystical jade was taken out, the spiritual qi in the entire room instantly became extremely dense, causing the spirits of the 3 people present to be shaken. Brother Yin, you and I are like old friends when we meet today. I regret not meeting you earlier. This piece of jade is a greeting gift from me. Please accept it first, said Lei Dongtian. It seemed that moving Yin Yang with emotion and making friends could no longer move him. Therefore, Lei Dongtian immediately changed his strategy and began to tempt him with benefits. Yin Yang stared blankly. This is just a piece of 7-colored spiritual jade. We cultivators can use it to enhance our cultivation base. Such a piece of spiritual jade is enough to push your current cultivation base forward, said Lei Dongtian. He was very satisfied with Yin Yang's current reaction. How could these country bumpkins be so shocked by a piece of 7-colored spiritual jade? Look at your inexperienced look. Let's see if you still won't tell the truth later. Yin Yang picked up the spiritual jade and looked at it for a while. He sighed and said, extremely conflicted, "No, I can't say it. This matter is too important. Brother Lei, don't make it difficult for me." Although he said so, he did not let go of the hand that held the 7-colored spiritual jade. The meaning of this was very meaningful. Seeing this, Lei Dongtian smiled faintly. His right hand touched the ring again and took out the colorful spiritual jades one by one. 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 5 pieces, 10 pieces, 15 pieces, 20 pieces. Lei Dongtian stopped and said sincerely, "As long as Brother Yin can tell me the whole story, these will be a token of my appreciation." Cough, many people say that I like to lie. Here, I solemnly declare that Yin Yang is Yin Yang and I am me. Yin Yang lies, but it doesn't mean that I do. I never lie. I am very honest and my character is absolutely honorable. Chapter 324. Yin Yang swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva. His eyes stared straight at the table full of spiritual jades, unblinking. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Obviously, he wanted it to the extreme, but he was still weighing the pros and cons in his heart. He closed his eyes and pushed both of his hands outwards, saying with difficulty, "Brother Lei, I am not the kind of person who forgets about morality at the sight of profit. I don't have a place to put them even if I take them. I'd better." Lei Dongtian smiled faintly, his right hand swiping at the ring on his left hand. A fruit suddenly appeared on the table. It was a bright red fruit the size of a finger. However, the flesh of the fruit seemed to be transparent, and there was a faint glimmer of starlight flowing within it. It was obviously an extraordinary fruit. The moment he took it out, a thin layer of mist appeared on the surface of the fruit. In the next moment, an indescribable fragrance filled the entire space. Lei Dongtian's voice was leisurely as he introduced, "Brother Yin, this is a 500-year-old ruby fruit. Don't underestimate its small size. Not only does it taste great, but it can also increase a martial artist's cultivation base by 50 years each time they consume it." 50 years of cultivation base? Yin Yang's eyes widened, and his entire body trembled. His so-called grace had long disappeared. If you can consume 3 of them, it can increase your cultivation base by no less than 100 years. However, each person can only consume 3 at most. More than that, you can only satisfy your cravings. Lei Dongtian said slowly, "As long as Brother Yin is willing to tell me the truth, I can give you 10 of these fruits. I came out in a hurry this time, so I didn't bring many with me. If there's a chance in the future, I'll bring some more for Brother Yin." Yin Yang's face was flushed as if he was dizzy. He breathed heavily and said, This. Lei Dongtian smiled, waiting for him to make a decision. Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and rubbed his cheeks with both hands. His eyes were red, and he said with all his might, "Brother Lei, a straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations." He closed his eyes, raised his head, and took a deep breath. Finally, he opened his eyes and said with a desperate and crazy tone, "I want 30 pieces of spirit jades. I want 30 of these fruits. Then, add a ring like the one on your finger." Yin Yang closed his eyes, panting heavily as he murmured, "I shall be greedy and despicable for once today." The black-robed old man flew into a rage and said, "You're clearly asking for too much. Do you know that these things—" Lei Dongtian wanted to stop him, but before he could do so, Yin Yang seemed to relax and opened his eyes at once. He said in a low voice, "I see. I was just speaking casually. Yin Yang is only a small character outside the imperial court. How could he be of any great ability to help young Master Lei?" Lei Dongtian stared at the black-robed elder fiercely. His eyes were full of blame. Yin Yang was about to give in, but the black-robed elder's words had gone against Yin Yang's moral bottom line, causing all of young Master Lei's efforts to go down the drain. How could he not be angry? The black-robed elder gritted his teeth and lowered his head. Don't worry, Brother Yin. This is my guard. Servants have always paid attention to the gains and losses of external things. How would they know about the friendship between you and me? Lei Dongtian said. Yin Yang said faintly, what this guard said is the truth. I was indeed too greedy. I shall learn from this and never act recklessly again. Lei Dongtian said. Brother Yin. Yin Yang waved his hand and interrupted him, saying, Brother Lei, you don't have to say any more. I couldn't control myself just now and made a fool of myself. Sigh, I've always boasted about my loyalty to the country, but just now, this is the crime of betraying the country. How can any Yutong citizen do it? Even if I didn't do it, I know I shouldn't do it just by thinking about it. Lei Dongtian glared at the black-robed old man again. The black-robed elder was as quiet as a cicada in winter. The crime of betraying the country. It turned out to be such a big deal. Come to think of it, the 9 Supremes were indeed related to the fate of Yutong. Yin Yang's words were probably true. Lei Dongtian pondered for a moment and said, Brother Yin, you don't have to be so absolute. Whether it's the Lei family or myself, we have no conflict with your country, nor are we enemies. Even towards Lord Supreme Wind, we only have respect. How about this? Other than the 30 pieces of rainbow spiritual jade, 30 pieces of 500-year-old ruby fruit, and a spatial ring, I'll give you 5 stalks of mystical spirit grass and 3 meridian uniting pills. The mystical spirit grass can not only make the dantian and meridians more flexible, it can also greatly increase the strength of the deific consciousness. The effect of the meridian uniting pill is, if someone can't break through, or has yet to reach the stage of success, consuming the meridian uniting pill will allow the advancement to be completely smooth, allowing one to cross a level and increase one's strength by 3 times. Lei Dongtian said slowly, these items, in addition to the spiritual jade and ruby fruit, Brother Yun is now at the 7th peak pinnacle, but with these, it's enough for you to step into the realm of 10th peak perfection within half a year, or even higher. It can increase Brother Yun's power by 100 times on the basis of his current strength. In fact, it might even be more than that. This is the greatest sincerity that I can offer. As long as Brother Yin uses it, you can become the top expert in the world within a year, other than a handful of people. Lei Dongtian said, I only hope that Brother Yin can tell me the truth. I'll be grateful. Once it's done, there will be rewards. Yin Yang's breathing grew heavier. He struggled for a long time, his expression uncertain. After a long while, he finally said through gritted teeth, I want these items now. That's reasonable, no problem at all. Lei Dongtian smiled easily. He turned his head and snorted. The black-robed elder took out his ring with some resistance. Lei Dongtian took the ring and snorted. If this bastard didn't interrupt just now, why would I need to take out the additional mystical spirit grass and meridian uniting pills? One had to know that just these 2 items alone were extremely valuable. Brother Yin, this is a storage ring. Lei Dongtian smiled and said, Come, let me teach you how to use it. Under Lei Dongtian's serious guidance, Yin Yang first smeared his own blood on the entire ring, then slowly immersed it with his spiritual power. Finally, he used his deific consciousness to establish a spiritual connection with the ring and successfully recognized it as its owner. Only then did he begin to practice using it. Yin Yang, who was a beginner, used his spiritual power to lock onto a rainbow spiritual jade. With a thought, the spiritual jade disappeared at once. Good stuff. It's really amazing. Yin Yang beamed with joy. The black-robed elder felt like his stomach was about to explode. Of course it's good stuff. That's my treasure. The treasure that I've used for half my life. How can it not be good stuff? What a despicable greedy man. It really hurts this old man's heart to death. He had never suffered such a huge loss. His spatial ring was actually gone on this trip. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. Yin Yang put away the 20 rainbow spiritual jades and looked at Lei Dongtian eagerly, playing the wretched image of not releasing the eagle without seeing the rabbit. Lei Dongtian laughed and took out another 10 pieces with a wave of his hand. Yin Yang continued to keep them. Then he kept the cinnabar fruits. 3 pieces. Lei Dongtian frowned and waved his hand again. 27 cinnabar fruits appeared on the table immediately. Yin-yang did the same and kept them. Lei Dongtian then took out the mystic spiritual grass and the meridian unblocking pill. Yin-yang put away all the spiritual materials and was completely satisfied. He put the ring on his middle finger and said happily, "It matches my finger perfectly." The black-robed elder was so angry that his nose was contorted. This time, it was really too much of a ripoff. Lei Dongtian was still unruffled and calm. However, there was a hint of coldness in the depth of his eyes as he spoke in a composed manner. "Brother Yin, your country seems to place a lot of importance on the 9 Supremes and Supreme Winds matter. He was asking for payment. You've already received my payment. You should say something to make me feel that it's worth it." Yin-yang took a deep breath and smiled. "There are many complicated things in this. I have to tell you one by one. Brother Lei, please don't be anxious." Lei Dongtian's eyes flashed coldly as he said with a smile, "Brother Yin, don't tell me those complicated things. My time is precious, and I can't afford to waste it." Lei Dongtian was already dissatisfied. The phrase "can't afford to waste it" was not only referring to himself, but also a warning to Yin-yang. If the value of the information was not enough, Yin-yang had to be mentally prepared to pay the price. Was it that easy to take advantage of this young master? Yin-yang chuckled. "If Brother Lei is not satisfied, I will return these things to you in their original forms. I have nothing else to offer in the secular world, but I still have a human head on my neck. Is this gift of apology enough?" Lei Dongtian laughed. "Brother Yin is too serious." He thought to himself, "If you were to brush me off, do you think I wouldn't take your head?" Yin-yang thought about it carefully. After a long time he spoke again. "This matter is really a long story." He looked around and said, "Can you let this old man look after the door?" Lei Dongtian nodded gently. "Of course." The black-robed elder stood up with a belly full of anger, feeling that his stomach was about to explode. He walked out and stood straight at the door like a zombie. "Brother Lei, it's not that I'm trying to be mysterious, but what I'm going to say today is the top secret of our country. No matter what position I'm in, or what kind of guarantee Brother Lei has given me, I shouldn't reveal it." Yin-yang caressed the ring on his finger, his face full of bitterness. "Today, I've been blinded by greed and violated the principles of life. I only hope that this will not cause harm to my country." "Absolutely not," Lei Dongtian said with a straight face. "I can guarantee this, Brother Yin. Yin-yang has been bribed. I want to be bribed too. What should I do? Bribe me with a few monthly tickets." Chapter 325. Lei Dongtian was sincere in his promise of absolutely not. To Lei Dongtian, the Tianxian continent, a mere country, was nothing in his eyes. Yin-yang sighed softly. His gaze was still a little unfocused as he pondered quietly again. This time, he was deliberating on his words. After a long time he finally spoke. "A few years ago, Tiantang City was suddenly bestowed with the 9 heavens domain, forming the residence of 9 Supremes. This residence of 9 Supremes requires 9 people of different cultivation attributes to enter the residence, to learn the peerless cultivation method, and become the 9 Supremes." Yin-yang enunciated each word clearly. "These things have long been circulating among the people. I believe Brother Lei has long known about it. Even if you don't know the truth, the reason for it is clear. However, I still have to start from here." Lei Dongtian said humbly, "I understand. I'm very interested to know the entire story of this how." Yin-yang said, "There was only 1 or 2 of the 9 Supremes in the beginning. At that time, our country's external war had already been reversed because of their intervention. Later on, as the 9 Supremes lords continued to appear, the 9 Supremes were finally gathered. In terms of combat power, the empire of Yutong's army was already invincible. This also meant that Yutong's opportunity to conquer the world had appeared. Therefore, it finally attracted the joint forces of the 4 empires and 7 heroes to come for the war. They dared not let us continue to grow stronger. If they continued to wait, it would be equivalent to waiting for death. However, even when the 4 empires advanced together, the 7 heroes attacked together, and the 9 Supremes lords fought on the battlefield, appearing and disappearing mysteriously. The four empires were still defeated, and their efforts were futile. Yin-yang sucked in a deep breath. However, the total military power of the four empires and 7 heroes still far exceeded what Yutong could defend against. To put it in the simplest and most straightforward way, even if the lives of 5 of their warriors were exchanged for one of ours, as long as this war continues, the empire of Yutong would still be unable to sustain itself, and its defeat would be inevitable. Even with the help of the 9 Supremes Lords, we can barely maintain the stability of the war and not lose an inch of land. However, it's absolutely impossible for us to continue expanding. Moreover, after many years of war, the strength of the nation and its people have long been extremely lacking. Fighting a war will always cost money. It's the same for our country. The other 4 countries and 7 heroes are also suffering. Their losses are even greater than our country's. It's just that they are cooperating with each other and supporting each other, not allowing any one of them to collapse. They are also able to hold on, causing both sides to fall into a stalemate and a dangerous balance. Finally, in the winter of the year before last, both sides stopped fighting. Everyone needs to recuperate. In fact, our country is also relieved by the armistice this time. Back then, my father had even sighed and said that as long as the Empire of Yutong had 3 years to recuperate, the 9 Supremes would be enough to conquer the world and conquer Tianxian. At that time, we were all very happy, because this eternal war was finally over. Yin Yang's expression was solemn. However, in the 3rd month of last year, a war report suddenly came like a bolt from the blue. When the 9 Supremes Lords went out to carry out a secret mission, their whereabouts were inexplicably exposed. In the Battle of Tianxian Cliff, the entire army was annihilated and the 9 Supremes were no more. When the news came back, the entire empire of Yutong was in a daze. It's just that this matter has dealt a huge blow to us. Lei Dongtian nodded and sighed as well. That's right. Everyone feels the same way. Putting ourselves in their shoes, such a blow isn't something an ordinary person can withstand. However, after a year, there was suddenly news that the 9 Supremes Lords had begun their revenge, targeting everyone who was involved in the plot against the 9 Supremes. The news itself was secondary. The key was that this news also revealed another fact. There were still people alive among the 9 Supremes Lords. The nation was in jubilation then. Although only one of the 9 Supremes Lords reappeared, we don't know if he was the only one left. However, to all the citizens of the Empire of Yutong, it was no small matter. Everyone felt that they had seen hope, that Yutong wouldn't fall, that the nation wouldn't be annihilated. At that time, even though we didn't know which one of the 9 Supremes Lords was alive, everyone was hoping, praying, and wishing them well. It didn't matter who it was, as long as one of the 9 Supremes was still alive. At that time, even His Majesty the Emperor was very excited. The 9 Supremes' revenge pointed to the 4 Seasons Tower, and all the enemies pointed out by the 9 Supremes were strictly punished. During that time, as long as the 9 Supremes Lords said it, there was no need for evidence, no need for investigation, and the person could be convicted and punished. Yin Yang said seriously, "Brother Lei, you can imagine how much our country values our heroes." Lei Dongtian sighed. That's right. Although Lei Dongtian did not place much importance on worldly imperial power, to be able to worship someone to such an extent, to be so highly valued and even worshipped, even he could not help but be fascinated. However, the 9 Supremes Lords have never really shown up. The 9 Supremes Lords have only been carrying out their revenge operations, continuously finding out the spies lurking in Yutong. We Yutong's officials have been dealing with the aftermath. This situation has been going on for a year, until now. Yin Yang's expression was extremely solemn. However, until today, we were shocked to realize that everything seemed to have gone out of control. Out of control? Lei Dongtian raised his eyebrows. Yes, out of control. Yin Yang heaved a long sigh. It was at this time that the surviving 9 Supremes Lords appeared. Only then did everyone confirm that the only survivor of the 9 Supremes was Lord Supreme Wind. Since Lord Supreme Wind's reappearance, not only was his existence inspiring, The first thing he did after his reappearance was to help us defeat Dongxuan's army. Many things that happened after that made people feel that everything he did was beneficial to the country, that he spared no effort for the country and its people. Yin Yang sighed. Therefore we no longer had any doubts that it was indeed Lord Supreme Wind. However, something huge happened in the dark, something that we've only confirmed recently. Yin Yang said worriedly. The forces that originally belonged to the 9 Supremes Lords, the subordinates of the so-called 9 Heavens dictum, did not lose control due to the lack of a leader during the days when the 9 Supremes Lords went missing. They were always under the country's control, and their actions were restrained. However, since Lord Supreme Wind returned, these men started to disappear gradually, leaving the country's control bit by bit. Eventually, their whereabouts were unknown. Yin Yang sighed deeply. Lei Dongtian's expression changed as well. How is this possible? A country's military force should always be under the country's control. How could it suddenly disappear? Lose control? Could it be that these people are all dead? They're not dead. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. However, they're no longer contributing to the country. They're only serving this Lord Supreme Wind who's still alive. This is getting more and more interesting. Lei Dongtian smiled playfully. With his rich experience in Yin Yang's narration, he naturally knew the crux of the matter. Obviously, there was something wrong with the 9 Supremes Supreme Wind, who was still alive. Perhaps, this was the other main reason why Yin Yang was willing to compromise, to accept his temptation, and betray his country's secrets. While Lei Dongtian's interest was piqued, his suspicion towards Yin Yang had lowered a notch. Of course, it's a big deal for so many people to go missing. However, the momentum that Yutong's higher-ups have created for the 9 Supremes Lords has been built up. Not only has the 9 Supremes' prestige been restored, it's even greater than before. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. Therefore, no matter how suspicious we are, we can only remain as suspicions. Lei Dongtian nodded and sighed. That's right. This matter is indeed confusing. It's hard to predict, and even harder to take action. In the meantime, we can only observe and hope that everything is just a misunderstanding, or that Supreme Wind has other arrangements. However, not long ago another major incident happened. Yin Yang's expression was extremely somber. This time, Lord Supreme Wind has gone up against Yutong's elder, the tutor of 3 generations of emperors, an old official of 4 dynasties, a master of literature, a scholar's grandmaster, and the leader of the literati, He Hanqing. Lei Dongtian beamed. I've heard of this before. I heard that this old Sir He is also. Yin Yang said faintly. This Lord Supreme Wind has said that our Lord He Hanqing, who is almost 90 years old, is from the 4 Seasons Tower. He has also said that Lord He is Supreme Lord Spring Frost, one of the 4 Supreme Lords who are the backbone of the 4 Seasons Tower. Yin Yang wore a mocking expression on his face. How hilarious is this? Lei Dongtian said. But why did I hear that this Lord He is Supreme Lord Spring Frost himself? Yin Yang's expression was sorrowful. He did not speak for a long time, only speaking in a low voice after a long period of dejection. Brother Lei, you're not the only one who has this thought. I'm afraid the whole world knows that old Sir He is Supreme Lord Spring Frost. However, is what the world knows the truth? He sighed in grief and indignation. I wonder if Brother Lei knows that old Sir He is almost 90 years old this year. His face is covered with age spots that only an ordinary old man would have. In his lifetime, he has trained more than 10,000 talents for Yutong's civil administration. Lei Dongtian was moved. Any cultivator, even the most ordinary beginner of the peak realm, should have a lifespan of more than 100 years. It was impossible for him to have age spots like an ordinary person, unless that person was really an ordinary old man of 80 or 90 years old. Among all the high officials of Yutong's civil administration, 70% of them are old Sir He's disciples. Yin Yang emphasized each and every word. His Majesty's father is old Sir He's disciple. Even His Majesty himself has been taught by old Sir He, and His Highness the Crown Prince is also old Sir He's disciple. Old Sir He has given his all for Yutong in this lifetime. If he had even the slightest bit of malicious intent, he could have destroyed Yutong in an instant at any time. Yutong would have long ceased to exist in this world. Lei Dongtian's gaze was thoughtful. Then, this old sir, he is not from the Four Seasons Tower? Yin Yang's expression was one of extreme sadness, yet he did not want to speak. Lei Dongtian was shaken. If this was the case, then the conspiracy that Yutong was facing now was too terrifying. Chapter 326. However, old sir, he was still killed. Not only did the old man give his all for Yutong, he even died with his blood spilled. His loyalty was clear. Yin Yang lowered his head sadly, his eyes rimmed red. Lei Dongtian sighed as well, but he was calculating the credibility of this incident and the follow-up. If He Hanqing was not from the Four Seasons Tower, then who was? Also, why did the other party go through so much trouble to create so much trouble? What was their real purpose? No matter what, it must not be a small matter. The battle that day was earth-shattering. It pained the hearts of Tiantang people. Yin Yang could not stop sighing. An old and loyal official of Yutong has died unjustly, just like that. Along with him, there were many Yutong's heroes who were renowned for their time. It's just that these righteous men, who were reputed among the people, were branded as villains who were lurking in other countries and wanted to commit treason after they died. After the incident, we kept reflecting, connecting all the things that had happened during this period of time. We thought about what was going on. Yin Yang's voice was low. Then, we discovered a very terrifying thing. Lei Dongtian was completely immersed in the matter now, asking in high spirits, "What is it? How terrifying? This matter is truly frightening to think about." Yin Yang's voice was low, his eyes glinting with hatred. Everyone knows that the Four Seasons Tower had gathered many experts to set up some kind of formation during the Battle of the Nine Supremes Lords at Tianxian Cliff. It could be said that the pinnacle experts of the martial world had gathered in that battle. Under such circumstances, the news that spread out can't be false. This means that the initial news of the Nine Supremes Lords being annihilated with no survivors is true. Think about it. Under such circumstances, with the meticulous setup of a super sect like the Four Seasons Tower, how could they have allowed anyone to escape? How could there be? Yin Yang asked. Lei Dongtian's gaze was heavy as he said, "That's right." He thought about it and said, "If I were the one who set up this trap, since I intended to kill all the Nine Supremes in one fell swoop, I wouldn't have left any survivors. I wouldn't have left any hidden threats. Not to mention the number of corpses. Can't we count it by counting the number of corpses? How could such a huge loophole, like a missing head, appear in such a meticulous setup?" Yin Yang said, "What Brother Lei has mentioned is one of the doubts that we have been considering." Lei Dongtian said, "This is a major factor that needs to be confirmed. If I were in charge of this matter, even if all the corpses were placed in front of me, I would still behead all of them. I would even grind the corpses into ashes to ensure that nothing goes wrong." Under the suppression of such absolute strength and the concealment ability of the heaven and earth formation, if one person were to escape, wouldn't that be a huge joke? That's impossible. That's impossible. Yin Yang heaved a deep sigh. This is the first suspicious point that we have discovered. Lei Dongtian then asked, "Since there is a first, there must be a second, right?" "The second suspicious point is the time." Yin Yang said, "Let's pretend that the first question doesn't exist. The Four Seasons Tower's leader has committed an illogical and impossible mistake. There are survivors in the Nine Supremes. But this Lord Supreme Wind appeared a year ago. That is to say, after the incident at Tianxian Cliff, this Lord Supreme Wind has only reappeared after a full year to seek revenge." Yin Yang asked, "Then, where has he been for this entire year? Why didn't he return earlier? Even if it was just to send some news back. Even if no one else can be trusted, can't His Majesty the Emperor of Yutong be trusted? Could he have betrayed his own empire?" Lei Dongtian clapped his hands and said, "That's right. This is a suspicious point that is hard to explain." Yin Yang gritted his teeth and said, "My cultivation base is limited and my knowledge is shallow. I don't understand what kind of injury would require a year of recuperation." Lei Dongtian thought to himself, "Indeed, my knowledge is shallow. There are plenty of injuries that require a year of recuperation." Yin Yang said, "However, I do know something else. Lord Supreme Wind has a cultivation skill that can turn into a gale, and it's not difficult for him to kill an opponent of a higher level. However, his cultivation base isn't very high. It's not even as high as mine. The lower the cultivation base, the lower the cost of recovery. If he had really suffered such a serious injury, how could he have recovered in a year? Even with that kind of cultivation base, he wouldn't have suffered such a level of injury. I wonder if Brother Lei thinks that I'm right? Lei Dongtian agreed. You're absolutely right. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary martial artist would have died 17 or 18 times over for an injury that can't be recuperated in a year. This is another suspicious point. Therefore, the period of recuperation and recovery this year is getting stranger and stranger. Also, there's another question I had before. In this 1 year, even if he's recuperating, and we agree with this theory, but there's no news at all. This isn't right. Lei Dongtian followed his speculation instinctively. That's right. There's no news for a whole year. This can't be justified. Just like what you said, it can't be justified to not trust anyone. But not even the Emperor of Yutong. It's too much. Yun Yang snorted and said, even this can be explained. For example, he had to avoid the Four Seasons Tower's eyes and recuperate in an isolated place, so he couldn't send any news. However, you're carrying a blood feud with you. How can you be so calm? Lei Dongtian said, that's right. This is another suspicious point, one that stems from human nature. Supreme Wind has made a strong comeback, and has done his utmost against the enemy, showing his true nature. It's indeed suspicious to say that he's been holding it in for a year. Yun Yang said, there's still a fourth suspicious point. It's the cultivation base. Supreme Wind's wind manifestation cultivation base. Yun Yang's words hit Lei Dongtian's sore spot. His main focus against Supreme Wind was Supreme Wind's wind manifestation skill. Now that he heard the relevant clue, he could not help feeling anxious and asked, how so? What's wrong? He exhaled and said, the origins of each of the 9 Supreme's lords are mysterious. We don't know where they come from or their background. Even their identity, name, or gender is unknown. Only their cultivation base is recorded. After all, the 9 Supreme's lords have always been the vanguard on the battlefield, beheading generals and capturing flags, displaying their brilliance. On the battlefield, it's taboo to hold back. Therefore, the cultivation base they've displayed should be their true cultivation base. The Empire of Yutong has recorded the cultivation base of the 9 Supremes, lords in detail. When Lord Supreme Wind went to Tianxian Cliff, his cultivation base was at the 4th level of the wind manifestation. However, when Lord Supreme Wind returned this time, the power he displayed was only at the 3rd level of the wind manifestation. A full level lower? Lei Dongtian's interest grew. This is very unusual. He enjoyed the process of unraveling the cocoon. He especially enjoyed the process. It was because it made him look exceptionally intelligent. Yun Yang chuckled bitterly and said, it looks like Brother Lei has already guessed most of what I want to say. I really don't feel like saying it anymore. Lei Dongtian said excitedly. Then let me continue on your behalf. Yun Yang looked at Lei Dongtian deeply and said in a low voice, all right. Then I shall listen to Brother Lei's opinion on this matter. This Lord Supreme Wind carries a blood feud with him. It wasn't easy for him to escape, but he hasn't shown himself for a whole year. When he came out again, his cultivation base had dropped by a level. This is a very strange situation. Since there's such a blood feud, and he's thinking of revenge day and night, why wouldn't he cultivate with all his might? Even if he didn't improve, how could he have dropped instead of rising? Lei Dongtian was confident and pointed out the crux of the problem. Brother Lei's words are exactly what we're thinking about. Yin Yang sighed. Also, if he's completely isolated himself from the world during the year of his disappearance, how could he have found the Four Seasons Tower's people so precisely if he caused such a ruckus the moment he came out? Could it be that the Four Seasons Tower's people have their identities written on their faces? This doesn't make sense either. Lei Dongtian was indeed the young lord of the Lei family. He had hit the nail on the head, and hit the nail on the head. Yun Yang's eyes were filled with admiration as he said, Brother Lei's wisdom really amazes me. The group of us gathered our thoughts and studied this matter over and over again for a long time before we came to this conclusion. Sigh. Lei Dongtian comforted him. The main reason is that you don't even want to suspect. You don't want to. Actually, this is nothing. It really is nothing. Haha. Although he said this was nothing, he was already laughing, his pride evident. After all, the feeling of crushing others with one's intellect was simply too exhilarating. Lei Dongtian smiled reservedly and said, "It's just that when this Lord Supreme Wind made his appearance, it was as if he could predict the future. The moment he made his appearance, he pulled out the pieces continuously. Was there no mistake throughout?" Yun Yang corrected him. "Whether there's any mistake or not depends on the person, because the people he's pulled out were all executed before informing the authorities." Lei Dongtian clapped his hands and said, "That's right, this is even more suspicious. Didn't you just say that when he killed Old He that day, there were many famous heroes that had been fighting him for a long time? This is already very clear. Furthermore, since he's back for revenge, his ultimate goal is still to contribute to the country. Why would he bring all of the Nine Heavens dictum's subordinates away from the control of Yutong's higher-ups?" Lei Dongtian said, "This is obviously an attempt to break away from the system. It's a disrespectful act that deceives the emperor and his superiors. It can even be said to be proof of rebellion." Yun Yang could only sigh. "Exactly. This is also the conclusion we've reached." Yun Yang then continued, "Since this Lord Supreme Wind came back, his wind manifestation cultivation base has been improving by leaps and bounds. Not long ago, he could already turn into a tornado. This should be the cultivation base of the wind manifestation's 6th level." Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. "Supreme Wind has risen by 3 whole levels in less than a year's time." Lei Dongtian cut him off. "This is even more wrong. Has this fellow been eating sh*t for the past year? There's no movement for a year. And he's even taking a step back. Instead, he's rising rapidly after his return? There's no such logic in this world's cultivation path." Yin Yang said, "Who says it isn't? Let me say a few words. Some people say that the updates these 2 days are slow. Personally, I think that the updates these 2 days are the hardest to write. These few chapters are the essence of this period. Therefore, I'm here to defend myself. Some say that a supporting character's IQ is too low, and they'll be tricked easily. But honestly, if everyone had not read the book and understood it, I'm confident that anyone would be tricked by Yin Yang's words when they're faced with this. This is what I want to say." Chapter 327. Lei Dongtian asked, "Anything else?" "Of course," Yin Yang said. "After Lord Supreme Wind came back, or rather, after the battle against Old He, we were surprised to find out that not only did Lord Supreme Wind's wind manifestation cultivation base skyrocket, he became all-powerful. Not only is he proficient in the wind manifestation, but he also cultivates the cloud manifestation, fire manifestation, blood manifestation, and thunder manifestation. It's amazing, as if the 9 Supremes had joined hands." Lei Dongtian furrowed his brows. This time, even with his intelligence, he could not figure it out. The 9 Heavens domain's successor can only be chosen by a single physique. Yin Yang sighed. Yin Yang sighed and said, "Only when a single physique has reached a certain level can it be chosen by the 9 Heavens domain. This has already been proven. Therefore, it is impossible for any one of us, the 9 Supremes Lords, to possess the cultivation skill of others." This was probably Yin Yang's half-truth and half-falsehood. However, there was no one else in this world who could know the truth of this matter other than him. Therefore, no matter how Yin Yang boasted, he would not have to worry that someone would see through him. What was more, this reason was a basic understanding that everyone in this world acknowledged deeply. That's right. The 9 Heavens domain is so mystical. It's not just a single extraordinary physique. How can it be acknowledged? Brother Yin, it's wise of you to think of this. Lei Dongtian breathed in deeply. There's indeed a huge problem with this Lord Supreme Wind. There are a total of 9 suspicious points then, Yin Yang said. After our Yutong's higher-ups studied it for a long time, we've finally come to a terrifying conclusion. This Lord Supreme Wind is most probably fake. Lei Dongtian sighed as well, thinking to himself, I've only heard half of it, and I've already confirmed that this Supreme Wind is fake. You guys have actually studied it for such a long time. Even if the situation is compelling, there should be a limit. Besides, this Lord Supreme Wind is very likely to be from the Four Seasons Tower, maybe even the Four Seasons Tower's higher-ups. After the ambush, he obtained the 9 Supremes Lord's cultivation manuals, which is how he could combine the manifestation cultivation skills, Yunyang said. I thought of that a long time ago. Lei Dongtian thought disdainfully. As for the so-called treacherous officials of the Four Seasons Tower that Lord Supreme Wind has uncovered, I'm afraid they're all Yutong's loyal warriors. Yunyang closed his eyes in anguish. Brother Lei, perhaps you can't understand how I feel. Lei Dongtian sighed again and again. I can totally feel this feeling. I can empathize. It is indeed not a good feeling. It's more than uncomfortable. After confirming the refresh, everyone felt like dying. Yunyang said, according to my father, His Majesty fainted on the spot, vomiting blood. Sigh. Lei Dongtian sighed. He thought to himself, if I had to say, it would be a great fortune for your country if such a muddle-headed king died of anger. The most serious thing is, Yunyang continued, everything that Lord Supreme Wind has done during this period of time, at least on the surface, has been done in the name of the Empire of Yutong. What makes us speechless and uncomfortable is that we've done the most appropriate and perfect cleanup work for each and every one of them. Even Lei Dongtian was in disbelief. How could the imperial court of Yutong be so stupid? It was truly a King miracle. It was truly a sight to behold, being toyed with by an entire nation for a year. They were still suffering in silence, and were even going to continue to suffer? It's hard to back down now. If we were to reveal this secret, it would be equivalent to everyone in the imperial court of Yutong collectively slapping their own mouths, slapping them to death. What's more, once this layer of veil is revealed, the morale of the people and the military will vanish in an instant. Yunyang was inexplicably sorrowful. Therefore, even though we know that he's a spy, we still have to continue supporting him, using his reputation to stabilize the people's hearts. Yunyang looked at Lei Dongtian. Brother Lei, speaking of this matter, including His Majesty, everyone has a belly full of blood and tears. Lei Dongtian grinned. It would be a miracle if all of you did not have a belly full of blood and tears. This kind of privacy. Yunyang wore a smile that looked like he was crying. How would we dare to speak of it? We can only swallow our grievances, afraid that the slightest bit of it will leak out. When that happens, the people's hearts will crumble, the military's morale will crumble, the empire will no longer be a nation. He looked at Lei Dongtian sincerely. Brother Lei, please understand. I really didn't mean to make things difficult for you just now. Lei Dongtian said sympathetically. I understand how you feel, and I can empathize. If I were the one involved in this, I wouldn't speak of it so easily either. This matter is too embarrassing. It's an embarrassment to billions of people in the empire. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to afford to be embarrassed like this. Lei Dongtian sighed and said, Brother Yin, I understand you. It's not easy for all of you Yutong's higher-ups. Thank you, thank you. Yunyang shook Lei Dongtian's hand excitedly. Brother Lei, long live your understanding. Now Lord Supreme Wind, who has been making frequent movements, seems to have felt our alienation. Recently, he has disappeared from Tiantang City without a trace. Yunyang said, we can't find his whereabouts at all now. No, perhaps I should say that ever since this Lord Supreme Wind reappeared, none of us have been able to find out where he is. This person is so meticulous and careful in his actions that it's infuriating and insane. I've never seen such a meticulous character. He looked at Lei Dongtian and said, since this person has taken away Brother Lei's fiancée, my suggestion is. Lei Dongtian's gaze shifted as he looked at Yunyang seriously and asked, what suggestion? Does he know that this lady is your fiancée? Yunyang asked. This? Lei Dongtian was suddenly at a loss for words. That's right, does he know? Perhaps or perhaps he did not know. Yunyang rolled his eyes inwardly, and continued to guide him. Let's put it this way. Has that person seen Brother Lei's face? Lei Dongtian said. Of course he has. We've met once that day. Although I didn't see his face, due to his wind manifestation skill. He must have seen my face. Yin Yang said. If so, he only needs to ask your fiancé, and he'll probably know your identity. Lei Dongtian said. Of course my fiancé knows my background. Yin Yang pondered and said. If so. He lifted his head and gritted his teeth, a cold glint shooting from his eyes. You only need to wait patiently. He will come to you. Lei Dongtian asked. Why do you say so? Yin Yang said. Although Brother Lei's fiancée is the most beautiful woman in the world, and any man would be tempted, for someone like him, I think, he should not be lacking in women, am I right? Lei Dongtian smiled and said. Of course, any cultivator who has achieved something will not be lacking in women. If so, he most likely has some ulterior motive for kidnapping your fiancé. Yin Yang said. As for whether this ulterior motive is with your fiancé or with you, we'll have to wait and see. No matter what, since he dares to kidnap someone right in front of you, at least it means that he is not afraid of you, and has the confidence to do so. Since he is not afraid of you, even if his initial target was not you, I'm afraid it's inevitable that he will target you now. As the saying goes, one thing is dirty, two things are dirty. Other than being a great threat, Brother Lei's identity can also bring great benefits. It's not surprising that he would be tempted. Therefore, he will definitely come to you. As for what conditions he will ask for, it's hard to predict. Yin Yang said. Anyway, as long as he doesn't reveal his true form, you can't hurt him. Not to mention that he has a hostage in his hand, and a lot of bargaining chips. At least for now, he has the upper hand and is fearless. Listening to Yin Yang's analysis, Lei Dongtian thought that it was very reasonable. Yin Yang's brain was indeed very good. It seemed that calling him stupid was an unjust accusation. It was probably the officials of Yutong's imperial court who were stupid, the emperor of Yutong who was stupid, or perhaps they were too passive in their positions. One wrong step and everything else would go wrong. Sigh. If I were the emperor of Yutong, I'm afraid I wouldn't be much better off in such a situation. It's really too much of a dilemma. Other than that, I have to remind Brother Lei. Everyone is in a different position now. But the enemy of my enemy will always have a bit of kindness. Yin Yang said seriously. Although Brother Lei and this old man's cultivation base is high and it's rare to find a worthy opponent in this world, I'm afraid Brother Lei still doesn't know what kind of existence the Four Seasons Tower is. Lei Dongtian said faintly. I don't care what kind of existence the Four Seasons Tower is, but it's a fact that they've touched my people. That won't do. Yin Yang said worriedly. Brother Lei, you come from a reclusive family and have your own strength of character, but listen to my advice. With the backing of your huge family, and the ease with which flying mystical beasts can send messages, you can summon a large number of experts with just a letter. Why would he put his precious body in danger? The Four Seasons Tower is by no means an easy opponent. Yutong is still a powerful country in the world, but we're still being toyed around by them. Their strength is evident. What's more, perhaps the ability they've shown now is just the tip of the iceberg. I've heard countless legends about them, such as subduing the world by force, bathing the martial world in blood, confronting the world's unrivaled expert, and not losing the upper hand, and so on. Brother Lei, you must be careful. What he meant was, if your family is so powerful, why don't you send more experts to annihilate the Four Seasons Tower? Chapter 328. Lei Dongtian chuckled bitterly and said, Brother Yin, I know what you're saying is for my sake and your words are sincere. The enemy of my enemy will always have a tinge of kindness, and your words have won my heart. However, you have to think about it. If I were to summon too many experts, would he still dare to come? Yin Yang said, He can hide in the dark. It is better to be safe than sorry. Lei Dongtian pondered and said, Brother Yin, you don't have to persuade me anymore. I've made up my mind. Just the two of us alone are enough to turn the Four Seasons Tower upside down. At the very least, saving my fiancé will be a piece of cake. Yin Yang said worriedly. If so, I wish Brother Lei success and all your wishes come true. However, Brother Lei, if there's anything you need help with, don't be shy. Still, the enemy of my enemy will always have a tinge of kindness. Lei Dongtian smiled and said, I understand. If there's a need, I won't be shy with Brother Yin. Lei Dongtian's impression of Yin Yang had gone up a notch. In fact, Lei Dongtian had no intention of forming a friendship with Yin Yang from the beginning. Even if Yin Yang was not related to Jilingxi, their positions were different. Yin Yang's shallow ability was not even worthy of Lei Dongtian's attention, which had already determined Lei Dongtian's original intention. However, Yin Yang had always poked into Lei Dongtian's thoughts and thought for him in many ways. Even if it was because of the many benefits Lei Dongtian had given him, and the relationship of the enemy's enemy, Yin Yang's concern was still genuine. Of course, Lei Dongtian would not be completely untouched. Therefore, his tone of conversation with Yin Yang had gradually turned into one that came from the bottom of his heart. This had once again proven the level of a certain someone's acting skills. It was truly vivid and penetrating. One could not help but admire him. Yin Yang nodded, but he still seemed to be worried. He pondered for a moment and said, Brother Lei, why don't you and your family stay at my house? We can take care of each other. This is the residence of Marquis after all. No matter what, that fellow is still carrying Lord Supreme Wind's name. You won't be too harsh on us. Lei Dongtian smiled and said proudly, Brother Yin, are you trying to protect me? Yin Yang replied, What are you talking about, Brother Lei? This is just an expedient measure. Lei Dongtian said, Brother Yin, I understand your good intentions. However, with my cultivation, if I still need you to protect me then, I really won't have the face to see anyone. Yin Yang kept quiet for a while and said, If so, Brother Lei, please choose a place not far from me to stay temporarily. I will always be worried. Brother Lei, there are so many of us. Yet we've still been fooled by a single person until now. This person is truly resourceful and full of schemes. It's impossible to guard against his crafty schemes. Even if Brother Lei's martial prowess is outstanding and you're not afraid of the enemy's attack, but if they use strange methods, can Brother Lei really handle it? Why don't Brother Lei stay in the inn opposite my house? Although it's not a top-notch inn, the best inns in the city are too far away from the residence of Yin. If anything happens, I'm afraid I won't be able to help. If Brother Lei were to live across from me and something really happened, I would be the host after all. It would be much more convenient for me to deal with human affairs than Brother Lei. If necessary, I could even give Brother Lei some advice. Yin Yang said sincerely, Brother Lei, when you're outside, don't be stubborn. Lei Dongtian saw that Yin Yang's sincerity was all for his sake and felt touched. He said, If so, both of us will stay in the inn diagonally opposite. Thank you, Brother Yin. Yin Yang smiled and said, It's rare to have such a good friend like Brother Lei. You're so skilled, your family background is even better, and your character is so good. Of course, this young brother wants to get closer to Brother Lei. He smiled shyly and said, Speaking of which, I was greedy just now. I feel very guilty now. Actually, Brother Lei can just give me some. This young brother was too greedy just now. As he spoke, he took off the ring and said, Brother Lei, please keep these treasures. This young brother is really ashamed to accept them. Initially, Lei Dongtian's plan was to wait for Yin Yang to finish talking. He would take these things back if he said so. Do you have the ability to not return them? However, now that they were having such a pleasant conversation, and Yin Yang was so considerate of him, how could he really take them back? Moreover, he was going to stay here for a period of time, and had to rely on Yin Yang for many things. After all, only Yin Yang could find such a peerless secret in this place. Look for someone else? Should he look for the emperor or the prince? Not to mention whether the other person would be helpful or not. It would be troublesome to reconnect with them, and he would have to give them some benefits. Instead of that, it was better to hand Yin Yang over. Even if he were to take them back, it would be after the matter was settled. He could not do it now anyway. What are you talking about, Brother Yin? Lei Dongtian frowned and said unhappily, Brother, what kind of person do you think I am? Just as Yin Yang was about to speak, Lei Dongtian had already stopped him and said, "Could it be that in Brother Yun's eyes, this elder brother is someone who doesn't believe in his words and has no eloquence?" Yun Yang smiled awkwardly. "Well," Lei Dongtian said heartily, "brother, to be honest, I do have a lot of these things. If Brother Yun needs them, I'll bring some for you every time I come in the future." Outside the door, the corners of the black-robed elder's lips twitched. "You have a lot. You bring some every time you come? Young lord, you really know how to brag. A storage ring like this would fetch a sky-high price, even in the bound of universe. I've only gotten this one after living for so long. I actually have so many of them that I can give one every time I send a gift. You've given my things away, and you're still bragging here. I wonder if this old man can make up for it when I go back." Sigh. Yun Yang and Lei Dongtian had a pleasant conversation. The more they talked, the more congenial they became. Both of them felt that they were in love, and almost became sworn brothers. Lei Dongtian had wanted to reveal Ji Lingxi's secret, and tell Yun Yang that this was the girl he liked. However, after seeing Yun Yang's reaction, he had long suppressed this initial thought. No matter how he looked at it now, he felt that Yun Yang was an honest person, who cared for him wholeheartedly. It was not nice to use such a trick, not to mention that they still had to work together during this period of time. The follow-up would have to wait until the end of the collaboration. Looking at Yin Yang's sincere gaze, he could not help but sigh in guilt. Sigh. I still have to kill such a person when I leave and snatch these things back. It's a little apologetic and uncomfortable. That night, Yun Yang and Lei Dongtian drank to their heart's content, and talked about everything under the sun. They talked about poetry, chess, calligraphy, and painting, all sorts of things. Both of them were in high spirits as they talked. Yun Yang took advantage of Lei Dongtian's good mood to ask for a few healing medicinal pills for Dong Tianling and Old Pang. Brother Lei, although those two people have offended you, but I know what you mean. Ha ha ha. Here are a few pills. Take them and give them one each. You don't need the rest. Brother, you can keep them. I have plenty of these things. It's really not a problem. Ha ha. The black-robed elder drank cup after cup of wine. He was bewildered. Back in the Xianhuang world, our young master was one of the most infamous little devils. Everything he did was based on his mood, and he would kill anyone at the slightest disagreement. How did he end up making friends here? The way things unfolded was too strange. Was this a twist of fate or a change of heart? While Yin Yang and Lei Dongtian were drinking, Lei Dongtian and Yin Yang had been drinking. The snow was still falling. In the midst of the heavy snow, the saber light flashed. Two ordinary-looking people who seemed to be traveling merchants appeared at the south gate of Tiantang City. The saber is here, right? Yes, it is. Let's go in. All right. That night, Lei Dongtian and the black-robed elder returned to the inn. Young lord, aren't you being too generous to Yun Yang? The black-robed elder was still feeling melancholic. Lei Dongtian said faintly, I have my own considerations regarding this matter. Old Mu, what you're most upset about and concerned about is that I've given him your storage ring. Am I right? The black-robed elder, Old Mu's expression darkened. He lowered his head and said, This old servant has no such thoughts. Everything this old servant has is given by the main family. How can I have any resentment? Lei Dongtian stared at him coldly. After a while he said, After we return this time, I will order the housekeeper to compensate you with a storage ring. I will not let you suffer any losses. Sigh, Old Mu, do you know that your biggest weakness is you are too calculative about small gains and pay too much attention to the current gains and losses? No, I should say that you're too serious. Why can't you look further? Old Mu paled. Yes, this old servant accepts young lord's teachings. Not to mention that you've been in my family for so many years. You've followed me for at least 6 years, haven't you? Lei Dongtian said faintly. You have the ability and cultivation base. You have the knowledge and experience. And you have the brains to scheme. You're the best choice and the best in every aspect. If you can change this shortcoming of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance and being narrow-minded, you'll be my first choice after I become the family head in the future. Old Mu's breathing quickened and his eyes glowed with surprise. Lei Dongtian was the first-in-line successor to the Lei family. It was a fact that his status and identity were set in stone. The weight of his words could be said to be sufficient. There was no need to doubt it. "Young lord, I'll definitely change." Old Mu was determined. He must be open-minded in the future. He must be open-minded and heroic in body and mind. He must change his shortcoming and be magnanimous. After giving Old Mu a taste of his own medicine, Lei Dongtian nodded in satisfaction at Old Mu's reaction and said, "Old Mu, do you think that yin-yang can become another cultivation cauldron for my 7 emotions?" Chapter 329. Old Mu was a little dumbfounded when he heard the question. After a while he said, "Young lord, please forgive this old servant for wanting to spoil your mood. Yin-Yang's looks are indeed outstanding, and his innate talent is that of the golden jade physique, which is rather rare. However, he is not suitable to be plucked, especially when young master has never had a liking for men. How could he be tempted by this child? If this is the case, this child cannot be left alive. This old servant will get rid of him later. Young master, please don't be impulsive." It was Lei Dongtian's turn to be dumbfounded. He looked at Old Mu with his mouth agape, almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. He only spoke again after the time it took to drink a cup of tea. His tone was filled with melancholy. "Old Mu, what are you thinking? I said that I want yin-yang to be my cultivation vessel. But I didn't say that I want to use those dirty tricks. My art of 1,000 hammers 7 emotions devastation has only passed 2 stages so far. The candidates for the 3rd stage are Ji Lingxi and Yurulan, and they are already in the game now. However, the candidate for the 4th stage is still being searched. I'm thinking of yin-yang." Lei Dongtian murmured, "Is it possible?" Old Mu heard Lei Dongtian's intention and knew that he was thinking in the wrong direction. He smiled sheepishly and said, "I was thinking in the wrong direction." Lei Dongtian rolled his eyes. Old Mu sat quietly and listened, not daring to speak again. After all, he was just a servant. He only had a smattering of knowledge about Lei Dongtian's cultivation method from his usual behavior. He was completely clueless about the specific situation. Otherwise, he would not have thought that Lei Dongtian had been bewitched by yin-yang and had developed an ulterior motive. In fact, Lei Dongtian would not let him know the secret of his cultivation method. Joy, anger, worry, thought, sorrow, fear, shock. Lei Dongtian calculated carefully in his heart. I've completed the joy. The worry has been reversed. As long as Ji Lingxi and Yurulan are completely in the game, they can help me complete the fear. However, the anger and sadness that follow after that have yet to be taken care of. If yin-yang can be used, perhaps he can be cultivated to be the carrier of anger. However, this state of anger needs to be broken down due to anger. Only when one's mind is in chaos will it be effective. I'm afraid I'll have to put in more effort during this process. Lei Dongtian frowned and pondered. After a while, he shook his head in frustration and said, Old Mu, do you think that what yin-yang said is true? Old Mu thought for a long time with a frown and said cautiously, Young lord, if you ask me, what yin-yang has said is impossible to be false. There are too many pieces of evidence that can be investigated. Any one of them can prove that yin-yang's words are false. But it's also because of this that it proves that everything he said is true. Lei Dongtian nodded with satisfaction. For example, the time when the 9 Supremes met with mishap, and when Supreme Wind appeared again. First, Supreme Wind's cultivation base before and after the incident. Second, the rapid growth of his cultivation base, and the difference in power each time he appeared can be investigated in detail. Third, after Supreme Wind appeared, the people he captured, and whether or not he handed over their whereabouts to the authorities are all obvious. Fourth, He Hanqing's identity can't be concealed anymore. Fifth, Old Mu said, these are all obvious examples. They can't be faked by humans. We only need to go through them once, and we can prove whether yin-yang's words are true or not. Lei Dongtian said, then from tomorrow onwards, go and investigate all of these. Although yin-yang's words are highly credible, it's better to be certain in your heart just in case. Yes, this old servant understands. After the investigation, if there's no mistake, I'm prepared to befriend this young Master Yin. A mysterious smile hung on Lei Dongtian's face. Old Mu asked in surprise. Young Master, are you planning to carry it out at the same time? It's better to be prepared than to bury the line when the time comes. Lei Dongtian nodded. First, befriend him wholeheartedly and become his best friend. Take care of him meticulously, treat him with sincerity, and stick by his side in life and death. Finally, there's an extreme reversal at a critical moment. Once he's hurt by love, he'll be enraged and will no longer believe in friendship and brotherly love. In the end, his primordial yang energy will be scattered and he'll be lost. Then, he'll become a part of my 7 emotions praxis. Old Mu said worriedly. However, the process will still be difficult. After all, young Lord needs to make a sincere effort in the early stage. The biggest taboo of this 7 emotions praxis is the setbacks in the cultivation journey. Once the cultivator loses control of his emotions, he'll trigger the demon in his heart to devour him. Although Yin Yang's ability is weak, he has quite a background in the Empire of Yutong, and his influence is considerable. He may not be a good choice. No, Yin Yang is the best choice. Those who have cultivated the 7 emotions praxis will have their emotions sublimated to perfection, the ultimate state of not being affected by love. The process requires the cultivator to go through the trials of love and be hurt. If I'm not hurt myself, it'll be difficult for this art to be perfected. Only when both parties are in opposition, and he's hurt as well, stacking the wounds, can this art be accomplished. It's like 2 tigers fighting, survival of the fittest. The winner will devour the loser and own everything. You'll have to reach the ultimate state of not being affected by love. Is it so easy to cultivate the magical power, to control the 7 emotions of everyone in the world? Lei Dongtian said faintly. When the time comes, even a strong cultivator whose cultivation base is far higher than mine will be impacted by the hurt of love when facing the 7 emotions praxis. There's no way to defend against it. This is truly an invincible cultivation method. Old Mu was at a loss when he heard it. It was obvious that he could not imagine the future of this cultivation method. Lei Dongtian, on the other hand, was in high spirits as he said with a smile. You don't understand. Some states can only be reached by those who are loyal to their emotions, or those who are extremely dedicated, or those who are extremely crazy and fanatical. And such a person usually hides, or holds on to a true feeling in his heart. Lei Dongtian said faintly. As for my 7 emotions praxis, it can erase the true love in his heart in an instant. Therefore, no matter how invincible the expert is, he can only extend his neck to be chopped off when he faces me. As for the prerequisite to activate it, there's actually only one. Find out which love he cares about. Lei Dongtian said faintly. Go to sleep. Old Mu agreed, and went to the room next door to rest. Lei Dongtian ordered Old Mu to rest, but he did not rest in peace. Instead, he took out the portraits of Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan, and hung them by his bed. His gaze was fixated on the portraits of the 2 ladies, his eyes filled with inextricable affection as he murmured. Perhaps you don't know how much I like you. I like you like a madman. I want you like a madman, but I can't. I have to destroy you and erase this love completely. Do you know the extreme agony in my heart? In the portrait, the 4 cold gazes of the 2 ladies were like 4 sharp arrows that shot towards him. Only when the body is free and safe, but the psyche collapses under extreme fear and despair, can I obtain the primordial yin of chaos, and complete a part of my 7 emotions praxis. But how do you know the extent of my agony? His eyes were filled with passion and infatuation, but there was also a kind of extreme madness in them. When I'm done with my cultivation, you'll all be dead. But from then on, I'll have to remember you all forever. Do you know this is also a kind of torture for me? At least, before I reach the state where I won't fall in love, you'll haunt me like a nightmare. But everything is for the sake of invincibility. It's worth it. Do you understand? Do you understand? Your sacrifice will create an invincible expert. I'm sure you'll feel gratified. He murmured madly, his voice extremely low. However, it was still audible. It was as if he himself had suppressed his twisted mentality to the extreme, and now it had exploded out. He had to spit it out. Outside the window, a hazy fog floated quietly in the air, dispersing into nothingness. A sliver of nine heavens illusion is still useful. Yin Yang sat in his room in the residence of Yin, lost in thought. This lay Dongtian, a person from the upper realm. What should he do to maximize the benefits? The short-term goal had been established, which was to encourage this fellow to confront the Four Seasons Tower. Based on the current situation, his words had a high degree of credibility. After all, what Yin Yang had said was completely true based on the evidence on the surface. However, in the long run, there would be a huge hidden danger. Once Lei Dongtian and the Four Seasons Tower faced each other, it would be fine once or twice, as they did not know each other's background. There would definitely be a huge conflict in the beginning, but it would be a different story after that. Yin Yang dared not think that the Four Seasons Tower's men were fools or mute. Facing such a strong opponent, the other party would definitely investigate the other party's background. Even if Lei Dongtian's background was mysterious, his ability was too high. The other party would definitely associate it and become suspicious. When they met again, they would definitely test him verbally. Once that happened, the deception would be exposed, and he would have to bear the wrath of both parties. This was undoubtedly a loophole. Yin Yang would not naively hope that both parties would treat each other as mortal enemies and fight to their last breath the moment they met. After all, neither Lei Dongtian nor the Four Seasons Tower were idiots. However, how could he remedy this loophole? Yin Yang racked his brains, pondering and deliberating. How could he make them fight to their last breath and continue until one party killed the other, only to find that he was not the one to blame when they reflected on it? It would be best if both parties could go so far as to fight to the point of irreconcilable enmity, not even exchanging pleasantries when they met. Then, they would either kill or cripple each other. It would be best if they perished together. This was undoubtedly a technical problem that was extremely difficult to overcome. Yin Yang felt that he needed to lay out his plans properly, otherwise, it would be difficult to succeed. Chapter 330. Sigh. A silhouette floated in. Has that fellow left? The visitor was none other than Ji Lingxi, holding a big red apple in her hand. Yin Yang frowned. Lingxi, you silly girl. Let me tell you. A lady must knock before entering someone else's door in the future. There's no exception here. You must cultivate this habit. Otherwise, how are you going to behave in the future? Ji Lingxi frowned. Yin Yang, what do you mean? Can you not use such a tone? I'm not your daughter nor your younger sister. Can you not always put on the airs of an elder in front of me? Can I? I'm begging you, okay? Yin Yang sighed helplessly. All right then. He raised his head and said seriously, Lady Ji, how do you do? Please, when you enter my door or someone else's door in the future, you must first. Before Yin Yang could finish his words, Ji Lingxi had already turned to leave. The young lady was trembling with rage. She bit off half of the apple in her hand, even the core, and chewed it with all her might. This blockhead serves you right to be a bachelor for the rest of your life. Not long after Ji Lingxi left, Yin Yang's door was knocked on. Come in. Yin Yang called out. Young Master Yin, are you busy? Yu Rulan walked in. Yin Yang stood up quickly and said respectfully, Sister Lan, you're here. Please take a seat. Behind Yu Rulan, Ji Lingxi watched with a pout as Yin Yang welcomed Yu Rulan in politely and respectfully. He even personally placed a stool down for Yu Rulan and looked at Ji Lingxi. Oh, Lingxi is here too. Find a place to sit. Ji Lingxi wanted to turn and leave at once. Was the difference in treatment too obvious? Was there such a big difference in our appearances? Was she that young? Was Sister Lan that old? Didn't the two of you argue again when Lingxi came just now? Yu Rulan asked as if she was having a headache. She truly did not understand why Yin Yang was like this. No matter what, he doted on Ji Lingxi and followed her lead. However, this doting was the complete doting of an elder, and had nothing to do with the relationship between a man and a woman. It was like a pair of parallel lines that would never intersect. What was going on? Also, I'm Lingxi's sister. We're just sisters and I'm not anyone to you. Is there a need to treat me with such respect? What did she mean by treating him like an elder? I'm only 1 or 2 years older than Lingxi. Yin-yang smiled and said, nothing much just now. I was just telling Lingxi to knock first when entering someone else's room, just like Sister Lan did just now. Sister Lan and Lingxi should call me cousin brother Yin, or cousin brother Yin, when they meet me in the future. Even if it's a more private meeting, or when it's just the three of us, we have to maintain this form of address. Right now, our greatest enemy is in the inn not far from us. Their cultivation is too high, so high that it's beyond our understanding. We must be careful. Even if they are far away, it's not certain that they won't be able to hear our conversation. We only need to hear one sentence from a conversation like tonight's, and we're all done for. Yin-yang said seriously, Sister Lan, you understand. We don't have any power to fight them now, so we have to get used to the new way of getting along, and acknowledge it from the bottom of our hearts. Yu Rilan answered readily. Cousin brother Yin is right. We really have to get used to it. Yin-yang looked at Ji Lingxi, obviously not trusting the latter's temperament. Not only was Ji Lingxi unable to vent her anger, it was getting more and more intense. She bit her lips and only said after a long time, feeling wronged, cousin brother Yin is right. Good girl. Yin-yang looked comforted. However, the compliment almost made Ji Lingxi lose her mind from her anger. She sat on the edge of the bed, almost collapsing Yin-yang's bed. Raising her hand, there was a green cucumber in her hand. She bit down viciously, her cheeks puffed up as she chewed furiously, her eyes glinting fiercely at Yin-yang. It was as if the cucumber was Yin-yang, or perhaps it was Yin-yang's flesh that young Mistress Ji wanted to chew into pieces. What's the background of these two people? Yu Rilan frowned and asked. Cousin brother Yin, have you found out anything? Yin-yang sorted out his thoughts and said, this Lei family's young lord is most likely from another realm, or a mysterious place called the Bound of Universe. Yu Rilan and Ji Lingxi's eyes froze. Bound of Universe? Someone from the upper realm? Coming from renowned aristocratic families, they were no strangers to the term upper realm. Although they did not know what level the Bound of Universe was, or what kind of realm it was, they knew that it was not a simple place. At least, it was far above the Tianxian continent. Silence. Yin-yang said. The reason why he's looking for trouble with you is probably to use you to complete a stage of his cultivation method. I didn't hear clearly what cultivation method it is, and what it's about, but it's probably related to the 7 emotions. According to my speculation, the cultivation method should be an extremely evil one. But once it's cultivated, it'll be a mystical cultivation method with boundless power. Yin-yang analyzed carefully. Using the 7 emotions of life as the cultivation goal, it should be to fall in love, then leave it, break it, and destroy it. Even to the point of being merciless, heartless, and so on. Finally, this extremely evil and inhumane cultivation method is achieved. Yin-yang sighed. I don't know what you all think, but the degree of evil in this cultivation method can be considered the most extreme cultivation method I've ever seen in my life. There's no other. Yu Rilan and Ji Lingxi were both born in noble families, so they were knowledgeable people. Hearing Yin-yang's words, they felt their scalps tingle. Yu Rilan paled and said, You mean, that person is using both of us as cauldrons? Using us to perfect his cultivation method? Yin-yang nodded. That should be the case. Otherwise, there's no way to explain his previous actions. Yu Rilan and Ji Lingxi's expressions grew darker, extremely unpleasant. Cauldrons. These 2 words were the 2 words that all women in this world, who knew the true meaning of these 2 words, hated the most. Such an action was also an action that all women hated the most. He's been chasing us without killing us or capturing us. He's been torturing us continuously. Is this also part of his cultivation method? Ji Lingxi asked. Most likely. Yin-yang said. I eavesdropped on their conversation just now. There seemed to be a line about, only when the body is free and safe, but the psyche can't withstand the extreme fear and despair can I obtain the primordial Yin of chaos, and complete a part of my 7 emotions praxis. What does it mean? Ji Lingxi asked. Yu Rilan sighed. What else could it mean? It's nothing more than to let us be in an environment of freedom, and not be controlled. He then exerted pressure, until our psyche is naturally crushed by the pressure. Even the primordial een belonging to a lady of primordial een will be messed up along with the mental breakdown. This is the perfect time for him to strike. If it weren't for Cousin Yun's timely appearance, we might have really fallen into his hands. Yu Rulon blushed as she spoke, gritting her teeth. It was no wonder. At that time, the two of them were almost on the verge of giving up when they were being hunted down. When they even had the will to die, the other party would immediately slow down, to give them a buffer and a chance to rest. When they were about to give up, the other party would change his strategy and start targeting their appearances. Whether it was then or now, it was obvious that the other party wanted to keep tormenting the two girls until they went insane. Ji Lingxi said with a dark expression, "Don't tell me that both our families don't know about this? The pursuit has been going on for such a long time. It's been 2.5 months. Yu Rulon's gaze dimmed as she said softly, "Lingxi, why are you still thinking about your family's help even now? This is the fate of the daughters of our noble families. From birth, our fate has long been decided. In the first 10 to 20 years, we had the glory of being a young lady. We could have anything we wanted. However, when we grow up, it's time for us to pay the price for everything we've enjoyed all these years. If the family needs to maintain its current strength through marriage, they'll sacrifice our bodies in exchange. If the family has offended someone they shouldn't and needs a buffer, they'll use our bodies to exchange and mediate. If the family wants to advance and become stronger, they'll still use our bodies in exchange. All in all, as long as the family needs it, the meaning of our existence is to wait for the right price to be sold, to be used in times of need." Yu Rulon said softly, "Why would our personal wishes be cared about? Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. Our wishes aren't even considered trifles, they're merely insignificant." After I understood this, I've long given up on all beautiful dreams. Sometimes, I feel like I'm a high-class prostitute, flaunting my extraordinariness and uniqueness. Deep down, I'm just raising my price and waiting for a suitable price. Compared to the girls from humble families, we so-called young ladies of noble families are perhaps even more pitiful. Ordinary well-off families or even poor families still have kinship, but for us, it's an extravagant hope, an unattainable extravagant hope. Yu Rulon's voice was low, her words clear, but the resentment that flowed between the lines was like a surging volcano that was about to erupt. Even if we're engaged and we've found someone, we can still go back on our word when the family faces a greater temptation. We can still. Chapter 331. Yu Rulon's situation was different from Ji Lingxi's. Ji Lingxi was an adopted daughter of the Ji family. Moreover, he had known about this matter since he was young. Normally he wasn't happy at home. Being treated like this, although he was a little angry, he didn't have any more dissatisfaction. After all, there were many years of gratitude for raising him. Yu Rulon, on the other hand, was the legitimate daughter of the Yu clan. She had grown up in the Yu clan like the apple of their eye since she was young. She would never have thought that she would fall into such an unbearable situation, sacrificing herself in the face of temptation. This kind of grievance was hard to describe. Speaking of which, if she had not promised to marry Ji Lingfeng, Yu Rulon's reaction would not have been so drastic. At most, she would have prayed that her lifelong partner would not be too bad. However, the reality was that Yu Rulon had been betrothed to Ji Lingfeng for many years. Yu Rulon had long regarded herself as the daughter-in-law of the Ji family and Ji Lingfeng's wife. Yet, the family had promised someone else without her knowledge and without informing her at all. This reality made Yu Rulon feel an unprecedented sense of shame. This kind of shame was as if she had cheated on her husband. In short, it was hard to describe. What's more, that person was also drooling over her missing husband's only sister. This kind of humiliation could no longer be described with words. It was hard to describe, hard to write, and indescribable. Yin Yang's expression was dark as well. After a while he said softly, "Don't worry, cousin sister and cousin sister. As long as I, Yin Yang, am still breathing, I will never allow such a thing to happen to you." Ji Lingxi's eyes shone as she looked at Yin Yang. her gaze filled with affection once more. This domineering tone, this declaration of protection, Ji Lingxi's heart, which had been drifting helplessly, was suddenly filled with a sense of security. Even when she was with her brother, it wasn't this obvious and intense. But remember, both of you, today is the last time we speak, as if we're not cousins. Yin Yang reminded them again. As long as this is done, you don't have to worry about anything else. Leave everything to me. Yes, cousin brother. Unexpectedly, Ji Lingxi was the first to respond to Yin Yang. The girl's eyes were gleaming. Although she was in disguise and her face was not at all attractive, the glimmer in her eyes still made Yin Yang's heart flutter. Subconsciously, Yin Yang averted his gaze and extinguished the stray thoughts in his mind. He thought to himself that he would find a young talent to marry Ji Lingxi off as soon as this matter was settled. Eighth brother was gone, so his sister's marriage would naturally be handled by him. He still had to fight against the Four Seasons Tower for a long time to avenge his brothers, and his life would be in danger at any time. Not a good man. The next day, Lei Dongtian ran over again and continued to chat with Yin Yang. Even when Yin Yang was teaching the mystical beasts, Lei Dongtian was watching with interest, not knowing how to avoid arousing suspicion. The members of the four great clans, who were supposed to be the most qualified to speak, were now as silent as cicadas in winter. How were they supposed to survive like this? They were here to carry out a mission, to watch and prevent others from seeing the young mystical beasts being trained. But in the end, there was a peak expert following them at all times. Moreover, it was the kind of guy who could turn him into minced meat with a single slap if he was unhappy. Not only could he not carry out his duties, but he also could not run away. This was really King unlucky. Chen Wanfeng and the other two were slightly better behaved. At least, no matter how scared they were, they could still put up the demeanor of the young masters of aristocratic families. Brother Yin, I think this three-eye boar, Lei Dongtian suggested. If you want to improve its bloodline, I'm afraid this is still a little lacking. Yin Yang said. May I ask, what would you do if Brother Lei were to do it? I'll directly replace its blood and upgrade its bloodline from its roots. At least, this three-eye boar can rise to the level of a 9th-level intermediate mystical beast, Lei Dongtian said in a strategic manner. Yin Yang nodded. Brother Lei's thinking is different and far-sighted. But what kind of mystical beast's blood should we replace it with? Lei Dongtian said. The blood of a 10th-level mystical beast, the Bear of Earth, will do. Fix the Bear of Earth side by side with the three-eye boar. One side will release the original blood, while the other side will be injected with the Bear of Earth's blood. After one cycle, it will be done. Qiu Yunsan and the Qiu family members listened with disbelief. Their only thought was to see billions of mystical beasts galloping past. F*CK, if we could capture the Bear of Earth, why would we need to capture this three-eye boar? This scoundrel was just standing there and talking nonsense. Also sacrificing a 10th-level mystical beast, the Bear of Earth, to allow the three-eye boar to evolve to the 9th-level intermediate. Is this a worthwhile trade? Are we stupid, or are you stupid? How could you do such a losing deal? Yin Yang said. Brother Lei's idea is very feasible. As the saying goes, one shouldn't trouble two people for one thing. I'll leave the matter of capturing the Bear of Earth to Brother Lei, and the follow-up of upgrading this three-eye boar to you as well. This young brother wishes Brother Lei to successfully complete this unprecedented feat. Lei Dongtian's expression froze as he said, "Ha ha." Yin Yang chuckled. Qiu Yunsan chuckled. Lei Dongtian turned to look at Qiu Yunsan, his gaze as sharp as a knife. What are you chuckling at? Qiu Yunsan immediately felt unwell. You chuckle, boss is chuckling as well. But when it comes to me, I chuckle, it's just for fun. Why are you looking at me like you want to kill someone? Isn't this differential treatment too obvious? What? Can't I even chuckle now? Qiu Yunsan was also a descendant of a noble family. How could he accept such humiliation? Even if he knew he could not win, he could not die of cowardice. He straightened his neck and said, This three-eye boar belongs to my family. I'm the one who has the most right to speak here. What's wrong with me chuckling? Lei Dongtian stared at him for a long time before he suddenly chuckled and said, "So it belongs to your family. To think that I was still hesitating if I should promise Brother Yin to capture the Bear of Earth. Now, I don't have to hesitate anymore." Qiu Yunsan felt like grass was growing in his heart as he said angrily, "What kind of existence is the Bear of Earth? Even if you agree, you won't be able to capture it." Lei Dongtian rolled his eyes at Qiu Yunsan, looking like he was about to lose his temper. "The Bear of Earth is said to be the pinnacle of existence in this world. How can it be captured so easily?" Xia Bingchuan hugged his arms and snorted. "But now that someone has spoken the truth, you're going to beat him up?" Chen Wanfeng chuckled and said, "You guys are digging up old wounds. If I don't hit you, who should I hit? All of you are asking for it. You know that it's impossible to capture the Bear of Earth, yet you insist on making things difficult for young Master Lei. You deserve to be beaten up." Lei Dongtian's handsome face darkened completely. He did not think much of these people, so he had only said it casually, using some high-class and unattainable things to show his status. As the saying went, he was just pretending. However, he did not expect someone to be so serious that he had been cheated out of his pretense. Although the three of them knew that Lei Dongtian's cultivation base was strong and far beyond what they could afford to provoke or even recognize, this fellow had beaten Dong Tianling up so badly. Naturally, they would not let go of the rare opportunity to mock him, especially when this bastard had actually pretended to be pretentious in front of them, saying that he would use the blood of the Bear of Earth to exchange for the blood of the three-eyed boar. This pretentiousness was a little too much. He was acting like an idiot. Everyone knew that these two mystical beasts were 2 levels apart. The difference was more than heaven and earth. The Bear of Earth was at the top of the known mystical beast food chain in the Tianxian continent. It was even an existence that surpassed the level of the mystical beasts. It was already difficult enough to be shaken. What more to capture it alive and extract its blood? Moreover, even if one could capture the Bear of Earth alive, who would be so foolish as to waste it and use the blood of the Bear of Earth to exchange for the blood of the three-eyed boar? Such an act could no longer be described as an ordinary prodigal. For example, would you be willing to use the blood of a dragon to exchange for the blood of a snake? Unless the person who made the decision was an idiot who had too much imagination and pretended to be an idiot. To think that this fellow thought he was smart enough to brag like this, saying that he could help the three-eyed boar to advance. Is this a classic example of treating us like country bumpkins? According to your theory, we could even say that we would capture a phoenix and exchange its blood with the phantom vulture. Then, the phantom vulture would possess the bloodline of the phoenix, greatly strengthening its foundation and level. Who doesn't know how to brag? Lei Dongtian's expression was dark as he said faintly, "The three of you have guts. You really have guts." Qiu Yunsan smirked and said, "Why? Can't young Master Lei hear the truth? Are you going to beat us up like how you beat Dong Tianling? We can't beat you anyway. Why don't we strike a pose? We'll listen to you and let you do whatever you want." The experts from the 3 noble families scratched their ears and cheeks anxiously, their hearts filled with misery. What was wrong with these 3 masters? The person in front of them was not someone they could afford to offend. Other than that, the 3 men's performance had also made the experts from the 4 noble families feel gratified. After all, this young master of theirs still had some redeeming qualities. When it came to treating his brothers, he was still quite loyal. Based on this, everyone felt that, even if they were to fight later, it would not be too much of a loss for them to bear the beating. At this moment, Yin Yang spoke up in a timely manner, hollering angrily, "What is going on? What are the 3 of you up to? Huh? Are you going to rebel together?" Chen Wanfeng said, "How would we dare? We saw that young Master Lei had a good idea and wanted to goad him into doing this. I didn't expect young Master Lei to not fall for it." Yin Yang seemed to be even angrier as he said, "Brother Lei is an honorable guest. How can you treat an honorable guest like this? Brother Lei was only joking with you. Can't you even take a joke now? No matter what, it has at least broadened your horizons. How can you all be like this?" Yin Yang's tone was stern as he pointed his aura at the 3 men, displaying the manner of a superior boss teaching his lackeys a lesson. Chen Wanfeng and the other 2 agreed. We were wrong. It's all our fault. We had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. How dare we measure Hai Shui? Yin Yang turned to Lei Dongtian and said, Brother Lei, please don't mind them. Although the four of them are unbearable, they are not bad at heart. It's just that their tempers are like the one you beat up. They are a little despicable. Brother Lei, please be magnanimous. Chapter 332. Yin Yang laughed and said, Brother Lei is broad-minded and tolerant. A great man does not hold grudges against a lowly man. Actually, if we were to talk about these three fellows normally, as long as they don't target our own people, it's quite fun to listen to them being despicable to others. Lei Dongtian chuckled dryly and said, Not bad indeed. Yin Yang then laughed to himself. As he laughed, the group of two naturally became a group of five. At the same time, Chen Wanfeng and the rest began to get closer to Lei Dongtian under Yin Yang's hint. Young Master Lei, Big Brother Lei, Brother Lei. The atmosphere gradually became harmonious. Very harmonious, quite harmonious. Occasionally they would quarrel. Lei Dongtian's sense of superiority could not be suppressed and flared up again. Thus, Chen Wanfeng and the rest began to taunt them. How could Lei Dongtian be a match for the three of them when it came to verbal attacks? His anger was burning from the taunts, but he was too embarrassed to show it in front of Yin Yang. Finally, it was afternoon. Lei Dongtian was not in the mood to interact with Yin Yang anymore. He sat under the flowering tree and drank his tea sullenly. He could not even be considered leisurely. Obviously, the experience in the morning had made him very unhappy. Coincidentally, a messenger bird landed in the residence of Yin with a swoosh. Lao Mei retrieved the message and passed it to Yin Yang. Yin Yang glanced at it and excused himself before walking towards the flowering tree. Obviously, the message was related to Lei Dongtian. What is it? Lei Dongtian's interest was piqued again. It seemed that there was news. I need Brother Lei to give me a guarantee. Yin Yang said hesitantly. I'm not afraid of Brother Lei's offense. I can't afford to provoke you, or the Four Seasons Tower. My small hands and legs are too limited. Lei Dongtian laughed and said, Don't worry. I will take care of everything. Our fight will not involve you at all. The corners of Yin Yang's lips twitched as he thought to himself. You've been coming to my house for the past 2 days. Do you really think I'm blind? Once you go against the Four Seasons Tower, this brother here will definitely be dragged into the mess. The first person they will come for will be me. The Four Seasons Tower's tactic of targeting the people around the target was their most common tactic. If they were to fall for the same trick, how could they justify themselves? I asked for a guarantee, and you gave me such a guarantee. This makes me speechless. Do you think you have a golden tongue? If you're so sure, why don't you go to heaven? According to the information I've gathered, someone has indeed seen the two ladies. Yin Yang unfolded the report and laid it flat on the table, reading it with Lei Dongtian. He pointed with his finger and said, But their whereabouts are extremely elusive. Up until now, there have been people who have seen it in the east and south of the city. Yin Yang said, But this situation doesn't seem normal, does it? A cold light flashed in Lei Dongtian's eyes. This action is indeed contrary to common sense. Could it be that this guy is luring me out? Yin Yang was taken aback for a moment before he mused. It's not impossible. Lei Dongtian grunted angrily and said, This is too much. How dare the Four Seasons Tower be so arrogant? Today the black-robed elder Old Mu did not come with Lei Dongtian. Instead, he was sent out by Lei Dongtian to inquire about the Four Seasons Tower and the 9 Supremes. To be safe, he had to investigate with great effort to verify what Yin Yang had said. Brother Lei, the Four Seasons Tower is the top force in Tianxian continent. They have always been arrogant. Although their actions are too arrogant, they have the confidence to do so. Yin Yang deliberated and said, Brother Lei, if it's not that important perhaps, why don't you give up? Lei Dongtian's expression changed. What do you mean? Don't you know what it means if I give up? Yin Yang said, Don't be angry, Brother Lei. I'm doing this for your own good. The Four Seasons Tower. is the scariest organization in Tianxian continent for thousands of years. Brother Lei, it's better to be safe than sorry. A real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife. A moment of forbearance is enough. Lei Dongtian was displeased and interrupted Yun Yang's words. Brother Yin, I know you're doing this for my own good, and you're worried about me. However, you really shouldn't have said this. What do you mean by a real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife? My wife has been kidnapped, and I'm afraid to give up because of the enemy's force? If I really give up like this, how can I, Lei Dongtian, still have the face to stand in this world? Yun Yang sighed and said, Brother Lei, other than the Four Seasons Tower's massive organization and shocking force, its leader is the pinnacle of the world and has the ability to compete with the world's unrivaled expert. Although Brother Lei's family is well learned and your cultivation base is earth-shattering, I'm afraid you're still lacking when compared to these experienced experts. It's not that this young brother wants to crush Brother Lei's confidence. It's just that this battle is too dangerous. If anything goes wrong, it'll be hard for you to escape unscathed. Instead of taking the risk, why don't you protect yourself first? A gentleman doesn't stand under a collapsing wall. Lei Dongtian waved his hand in an unquestionable manner and said, There's no need to say more about this. I have to save my fiancé no matter what. Yin Yang sighed. In fact, Lei Dongtian was very anxious now. The two ladies were as beautiful as flowers and jade. Any one of them was a rare beauty in this world. If they were to fall into someone else's hands, who knew if the other party was a lecher? Even if he wasn't, how could his mindset not change when he was guarding these two beauties every day? What if their chastity was violated? Lei Dongtian's plan, which he had been planning for so long, would be ruined and all his efforts would be in vain. What was the point of talking about the primordial yin of chaos? What was there to be confused about when even the normal primordial yin was gone? Since Brother Lei insists on taking action, I won't stop you anymore. I'll do my best to help. However, according to the information I've gathered, the other party's whereabouts are secretive, and they don't have a fixed residence. Yun Yang said. It's difficult to block the target directly and lock on to his position. Lei Dongtian said, I'll have to rely on Brother Yin, the local tyrant's help on this. This foolish brother is counting on you now. Yun Yang said, What are you saying, Brother Lei? We've been friends for a while, and we've become close friends. Even if there's a mountain of daggers and a sea of fire in front of us, this young brother will find these people for Brother Lei as soon as possible. Yin Yang's words were spoken with exceptional sincerity. There was no hint of deceit in his words. Lei Dongtian was greatly touched and said warmly, Brother Yin, when this matter is over, I, Lei, am willing to be sworn brothers with you and be a true pair of good brothers from now on. For life. Yin Yang said seriously, Good brothers for life. Lei Dongtian laughed. Today is such a joyous day. It was unknown if the messenger bird had sensed the harmonious atmosphere between the two of them, but from that moment onwards, it came continuously. The movements of all the major and minor matters in Tiantang City, which side had similar suspicious characters, the analysis and so on, were all clear and detailed. Lei Dongtian was amazed by this extremely detailed intelligence system. He was truly impressed by the extraordinary capability of young Master Yin, the local tyrant. Brother Yin, I didn't expect your intelligence network to be so impressive. It's impressive. Lei Dongtian praised. Mine? Yin Yang looked like he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Brother Lei, you've overestimated me. I don't have such capabilities. This time, I've used my father's seal to mobilize the royal dark web. When the old man returns, I'm bound to be beaten up. Lei Dongtian was stunned as well. After a long time he suddenly laughed and gave a thumbs up. Brother Yin, you're persistent. This brother will remember Brother Yin's deep kindness. Yin Yang was amused. Those are all minor details. It's not too late to talk about it when it's time to face it. Now finding the person is more important. Don't worry, Brother Lei. As long as this person is still in Tiantang City, I can find him even if he's 3 feet underground. In the afternoon, when the sky was about to turn dark, another important piece of information came. Yun Yang skimmed through the information, and an unprecedentedly serious expression flashed across his eyes. Two people have stayed in the tower to Heaven Inn. One is skinny and dressed in black, surrounded by saber energy. The other is like ice and snow, giving off a frosty feeling. This piece of information made Yun Yang think of Venerable Lord Saber almost instinctively. Was he the black-clothed saber wielder? Who was the other person? Yun Yang sighed and closed the information. He did not take the initiative to explain this time. So Lei Dongtian naturally did not know what this information meant. He looked at Yun Yang with a dumbfounded expression, waiting for him to explain. There's no further movement for now. We can only wait and see if there's any news at night. Yun Yang sighed. All right, let's talk about it at night. Lei Dongtian sighed as well. Lei Dongtian knew that Yun Yang had already done his best to help him. It was not that Yun Yang did not try his best if there was no further news. Naturally, he followed his advice. At this moment a black shadow flashed. Old Mu had returned. Lei Dongtian glanced at him, and Old Mu nodded slightly. If so, I'll go back to the inn first and wait for Brother Yun's good news. Lei Dongtian stood up. All right. Yun Yang responded quickly. Just as Lei Dongtian and Old Mu left the residence of Yin, Lei Dongtian asked, How is it? Old Mu said, More than 90% of what young Master Yin has said is true. Lei Dongtian was stunned. What about the remaining 10%? Old Mu said, The remaining 10% is probably the opinion of Tiantong's people. Their opinion is very different from young Master Yun's. Or perhaps it's the complete opposite. They all think that the 9 Supremes are heroes, and those who have been killed since Supreme Win's reappearance are all spies, lurkers, and people who deserve to die. Other than that, the time, cultivation base, and other aspects, including the battle with the Four Seasons Tower, are all the same as what young Master Yun said. Chapter 333. Old Mu said, Young Master is right. It seems that Yun Yang is being honest with me. This fellow is not bad indeed. Lei Dongtian thought about it and said, Regarding this matter, there is no doubt about it. Everything now points to the imposter Supreme Wind, the agent of the Four Seasons Tower's grand plan. Old Mu was dumbfounded. Was it really just an arbitrary conclusion? Lei Dongtian said, If it goes on like this, it can also be concluded that the Four Seasons Tower is deliberately targeting me? A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Old Mu was dumbfounded again. How? How did it become deliberately targeting you? Where did this deduction come from? How did it come to this conclusion? However, why would the Four Seasons Tower target me? Since the other party has done so, there must be a reason. What is the reason? Lei Dongtian thought hard and said, Could it be that my coming down this time has been leaked out by some force? Someone doesn't want me to cultivate the 7 emotions praxis? Using the Four Seasons Tower to stop me? Just like how I lured the Ji family and the Yu family. Yes. If the other families want to target me, no matter who it is, there will inevitably be traces left behind. After all, the cultivation method of the Bound of Universe and the cultivation method of Tianxian continent are not the same at all. So I can only act with the combat strength of this world. The Four Seasons Tower is the strongest force in this world, the kind that is second to none. It is the best combination. Lei Dongtian mumbled to himself. Under the guidance of his first impression, he pinned a huge bucket of sh*T on the Four Seasons Tower's head like a hot knife through butter. Old Mu was still dumbfounded. He was really puzzled now. He did not know how his young master could be so sure that he had directly condemned the Four Seasons Tower. He murmured, Young lord, do we need to verify this matter again? Lei Dongtian said confidently, There is no need. I already know everything. As the saying goes, a small clue can reveal the general trend. Moreover, we already have so much evidence. Why do we need more verification? So much evidence. Old Mu felt that his brain was really not enough. Was it really as the young master had said, that his brain was really a block of wood? Lei Dongtian looked at Old Mu as if he had seen through his thoughts. A sense of superiority arose spontaneously in his mind. This old man was so clear about something, but he still had a confused look on his face. Had he been living like a dog all these years? Otherwise, he would really be a blockhead. We've already proven the truth of Yin Yang's words, haven't we? Lei Dongtian said. As long as Yin Yang isn't lying, it's enough. Supreme Wind is fake anyway, isn't it? Yes. Since the Supreme Wind is fake, where is he from? Other than the Four Seasons Tower. Who else can impersonate him? Yes. Going against the imperial court of Yutong, and possessing the various manifestation cultivation methods of the Nine Supremes, it must be the Four Seasons Tower that had annihilated the Nine Supremes. Since Supreme Wind has displayed the multifaceted cultivation method, it can be inferred that Supreme Wind is from the Four Seasons Tower, isn't it? Other than the Four Seasons Tower's men, it can't be anyone else, can it? Yes. How long has it been since I came out to look for a wife in a cauldron? About 4 to 5 months. If there really was a connection, would it have dragged on for so long? The reason why they didn't attack us in the past few months is probably because they haven't been contacted yet. After all, our tracks were unusually well hidden, and we didn't even enter the realm. If you put it this way, it seems to make sense. What do you mean by seems? That's probably the truth. Lei Dongtian said exasperatedly. It was only when they managed to contact us that they started to attack us. Furthermore, the Four Seasons Tower's men must have guessed that we have an extraordinary background and didn't intend to face us head-on. That's why Supreme Wind made a move and took the 2 women away. If it wasn't me, why would he take these 2 women away to deal with me? On the surface, Supreme Wind is Yutong's man. He can deceive others and disrupt my investigation. Isn't this logical? In fact, if we hadn't found Yin Yang and gained his trust, it wouldn't have been an easy task to investigate further if we hadn't figured out Supreme Wind's real identity. Besides, we might have gone in the wrong direction and wreaked havoc in the empire of Yutong. Then, the Four Seasons Tower would have been able to watch the show from the side, wouldn't it? Ultimately, our efforts would have been in vain, wouldn't it? Moreover, we wouldn't have been able to trace the mastermind, would we? Old Mu slowly understood. Yes, it makes sense. Let's go back to the starting point. Since the other party had chosen to take the women away at the very last moment, if it wasn't targeting me, what's the reason? Yes, young master is right. Then why would the Four Seasons Tower, the real owner of Supreme Wind, target me? The Four Seasons Tower doesn't even know who I am, so why would they target me? Therefore they should know who I am, right? Lei Dongtian analyzed with great wisdom. The Four Seasons Tower could create such a huge commotion. The people they sent should be of some importance. At least they shouldn't be lechers, right? Yes, young master is right. Therefore, there must be something fishy about this. The only explanation for this is that our information has been leaked. Someone doesn't want me to level up, so they colluded with the Four Seasons Tower to launch an attack on us. Taking the cauldron away is the best and most effective way to stop me. The final conclusion is that this is a conspiracy against me. Lei Dongtian's face was dark. However, we still don't know which of the few families is behind this. No matter which family it is, as long as young master captures the Four Seasons Tower's opportunists, we will know. Old Mu said. You're finally smart for once. Lei Dongtian looked at Old Mu with approval. Yes, that's right. The key point now lies with the Four Seasons Tower. We don't need to destroy the entire Four Seasons Tower. We only need to find this key point and rescue the people. Then everything will be fine. Young master is wise. Wise or not, we still need to find the people. Lei Dongtian sighed. I'll take a nap first. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Old Mu, keep an eye out at night. All right. Lei Dongtian chased Old Mu out inside again. Old Mu was good in every aspect, but he was a little stubborn. If he was not pointed out clearly, he would never be able to think of something even if he died. I'm a little lacking in wit. Lei Dongtian sighed, feeling a little remorseful for himself. I have such unparalleled intelligence, but I can only pretend in front of my own servant. What's the use of using my intelligence to crush Old Mu every day? But if I don't crush him, this old thing's brain is like a rock. What a fool. Lei Dongtian sighed, and took out 2 more paintings, looking at them obsessively. The wind blew, and the clouds rolled. A white cloud moved with the wind, floating leisurely in the sky above Tiantang City. Yun Yang, who was in the form of a cloud, was thinking in his heart, are the two people living in the Tower to Heaven Inn from the Four Seasons Tower? If so, how great would that be? With this question in mind, Yun Yang quietly approached the Tower to Heaven Inn. The white cloud floated leisurely in the breeze. Yun Yang split his deific consciousness into two, and sent one of them into the Tower to Heaven Inn with the wind. However, Yun Yang had searched all the rooms in the Tower to Heaven Inn, but he did not find the two targets. Were they not? Yun Yang could not help but feel a little disappointed. The timing was perfect. If the Four Seasons Tower came at this time, they could further facilitate this and grasp the entire situation without leaving anything out. After all, Yun Yang was now in between two terrifying forces, stirring up terror. If he lost control, he would lose everything. Of course, it would be best to complete the situation as soon as possible and make the two sides kill each other. However, there was nothing he could do if he did not find his targets. Just as Yun Yang was about to leave, he felt a sudden jolt in his heart. The breeze was even more soothing as it floated towards the roof of the Tower to Heaven Inn. It had been snowing in Tiantang City for the past few days, and had only stopped this afternoon. Naturally, the roof was piled with a thick layer of snow that was almost 3 feet high. At this moment, there were two people standing peacefully on the accumulated snow on the roof. One of them was dressed in white. It should be said that this person was snow white from head to toe. Not only were his clothes, pants, shoes, and socks snow white, even his hair and eyebrows were snow white. Looking at him, he was almost no different from pure white snow, a natural snow white color. The other person, on the other hand, was completely black from head to toe. The two of them just stood there, reflecting each other. It was just that it was an evil scene. Yun Yang almost thought that he was looking at the two legendary assassins of the concourse of the underworld, the black and white impermanents. As for the thin and tall man dressed in black, especially the unique aura he exuded, Yun Yang recognized his identity at first glance. Venerable Lord Saber. There was a saber in the sky. After confirming the identity of Venerable Lord Saber, Yun Yang was even more careful as he moved forward with the breeze. It had indeed come. The cool breeze flowed more gently, almost as if it was gentle. It was even more careful than before, and it didn't even stir up the air currents in the surrounding atmosphere. However, the person dressed in white suddenly frowned and raised his head gently. At this moment, Yun Yang saw a face with a white beard and eyebrows. Although this face was also white, it was not the kind of ghastly white or pale. Instead, it was a jade-like whiteness. Standing there, he was like a flawless jade sculpture that was meticulously polished and carved out of white jade. A look of contemplation flashed across the face of the man in white, his expression gradually becoming solemn. Second brother you, Venerable Lord Saber asked. The man in white shook his head and did not answer. A sudden chill was emitted, followed by a hand grabbing out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than a dozen hands grabbed out consecutively, forming more than a dozen black holes in the air. The man in white observed the positions of these black holes with a solemn gaze, waiting until these black holes were slowly filled with air. Between heaven and earth, the original silence was restored. However, his gaze still did not relax. Second brother, what is it? Venerable Lord Saber asked. The man in white said faintly, I suddenly sensed something just now, an uncomfortable feeling of being watched. I couldn't help but think of Supreme Wind's wind manifestation ability that you mentioned. This is his territory, of course. It's best to be careful when doing things. Although that was what he said, his eyes were still scanning the air around him, as if he was searching for something. Yun Yang, who was in the air, was drenched in cold sweat, almost trembling. Amazing! Amazing! Chapter 334. Yun Yang had intended to get closer just now, but his movements were so light that there was not even a trace. Yet the man in white had still sensed it. Not only had he sensed it, he had also torn the air around him in an unreasonable manner, without saying a word, completely destroying it. The incident just now had happened right in front of him. He was so close to capturing Yun Yang with a single hand. At the critical moment just now, Yun Yang had decisively split up the power of the wind manifestation, keeping only the smallest part of it. Carrying his deific consciousness, he rose up quickly. He had only risen less than 5 feet, when he felt that his original position had become a black hole. Without the support of his deific consciousness, the portion of the wind manifestation disintegrated instantly, never to be seen again. Such a method, to be able to shatter the void with a mere thought, was truly terrifying. Venerable Lord Saber chuckled and said, "With second brother here, how would that supreme wind have the guts to come? Second brother is worrying too much." The man in white snorted and said, "Never be careless, even more so for us cultivators. The path of cultivation is rugged and difficult. A single mistake is enough to destroy a dynasty. It was the same for the 9 Supremes back then. It was the same for He Hanqing the day before yesterday. And you too. If you continue to have such an attitude, you might end up like this one day." His eyes were still filled with suspicion and confusion. Staring at the dark night sky, he was unsettled for a long time. After a while he said faintly, "Do you know why I acted?" A cultivator's intuition towards danger is above his own cultivation base, experience, and knowledge. I can even feel that the aura has not completely disappeared. Venerable Lord Saber was stunned. Huh. Yin Yang was even more frightened upon hearing this, rising into the sky at top speed. At such a critical juncture, he could no longer care about hiding his traces, because he had already sensed that there was a terrifying power rapidly forming on the body of the white-clothed man. Once this force was formed, at such a close distance, he would not be spared even if he were to transform into wind and cloud, or even nature itself. Although the other party could not lock onto his real body, as long as he launched an indiscriminate wide-area attack, targeting the entire space, he could definitely inflict heavy damage on him, or even kill him instantly. It was not a joke. Danger was imminent, so he had to quickly transform into the wind and leave this dangerous place. Almost at the same time Yin Yang made his move, a circle of frigid aura formed abruptly. An area of 1,000 feet was covered in snow and ice, turning into a space filled with frigid frost in the blink of an eye. Even the air within this range was completely sealed within this circle of extreme cold power. Fortunately, in the instant that this circle of extremely cold aura rose, a tornado broke away from the area enveloped by the extremely cold aura and rushed up 1,000 feet into the sky. It rose up into the sky like a dragon, and in an instant, it disappeared into the pitch-black night sky. Pop, pop, pop. A series of cracking sounds could be heard. The extremely cold aura slowly shrank and retracted, revealing the gloomy and furious faces of the man in white and Venerable Lord Saber once again. Venerable Lord Saber widened his eyes and stuck out his tongue. It's really just beside us, this. The white-clothed man cautiously observed the night sky like before. He did not speak for a long time. After another long while, he coldly snorted and said indifferently, "This mission will definitely not be as easy to complete as you think it will be." Venerable Lord Saber was ashamed. From the beginning to the end, he had not noticed anything. He had obviously fought with Supreme Wind. Not only did Venerable Lord Snow see through it first, he had even completed the attack. If he was alone, he would not have lost his life. However, as long as he continued to speak, he would definitely reveal more secrets that would be eavesdropped by the other party. Thinking of this, Venerable Lord Saber shuddered. Obviously, Supreme Wind's cultivation base had improved a lot compared to when he had besieged He Hanqing. Otherwise, he would not have been so impressive. The man in white stood at the top of the tower to Heaven Inn. After a full quarter of an hour, he exhaled dejectedly and said, "Thousands of feet up in the sky, the wind is scattered and formless. It's destined to be untraceable." He frowned slowly. "Has the power of the 9 Supremes become so powerful?" Venerable Lord Saber said, "This is only Supreme Wind alone." The man in white said faintly, "So what if he's alone? Isn't it the 9 Supremes?" He said slowly, "During the battle at Tianxian Cliff that day, we had gathered so many top-notch combat forces, and had the support of the formation to seal off the 9 Supremes' escape route. However, even with such a flawless setup, one of them still managed to escape. As long as it's related to the 9 Supremes, we can't treat it lightly. It's never too much to be cautious. Venerable Lord Saber said respectfully. Second brother is right. This young brother has learned his lesson. He had always thought that there was not much difference between the 5 venerable lords. Even if he was not as good as the other 4, the difference was still limited. He might not even be in a hurry. However, judging from today's incident, second brother Venerable Lord Snow's cultivation base was so much stronger than his own. The difference was already immeasurable. The truth was right in front of him. Venerable Lord Saber immediately felt a sense of urgency that he could not suppress. Mr. Nian had already warned Venerable Lord Saber about the difference in cultivation base, but it was not as exciting as the truth before his eyes. It turned out that he had really fallen behind so much. Second brother, what's the level of your cultivation base now? Venerable Lord Saber asked in an ingratiating manner. The man in white's face that was as cold as snow showed a hint of disappointment. The 8th heaven. I've been stuck at the pinnacle of the 8th heaven for quite some time, almost a year and a half. I still can't find the opportunity to break through. He sighed. Ever since the ambush on the 9 Supremes, my cultivation base has not improved at all. The 8th heaven. The muscles on Venerable Lord Saber's face could not help but twitch. He was only in the 3rd heaven, but this second brother was already in the 8th heaven. However, listening to his tone, it seemed that he felt that his progress was slow. How fast did he plan to progress? Or rather, what level did he want to progress to? What was the ideal level? Although the path of cultivation was endless, there had to be a limit. There was a limit, right? Second brother's progress is really fast. The great Tao is in sight. Venerable Lord Saber instinctively felt that he was a head shorter. His flattery intensified. If you weren't so meddlesome, your progress wouldn't be slow. The man in white said coldly, you're as busy as a dog every day. Naturally, your progress has become as slow as a pig. This is within reason, and within expectation. A Venerable Lord Saber's face was flushed. He felt as if a piece of burning charcoal had entered his throat. He could neither swallow it nor spit it out. This choke was 2F** King Porcelain. They were all brothers. Even if he were to tell the truth, was there a need to be so straightforward and undisguised? The man in white glanced at Venerable Lord Saber and said slowly, don't you think the words are pleasant to hear? No matter how unpleasant the words are, they're not as cruel as the reality. If your progress can't catch up, and your cultivation base stagnates, this position will most likely have nothing to do with you when the next round of deification of 4 seasons begins. Do you think that you still have a lot of time to waste? Venerable Lord Saber's face was bitter. He was speechless for a long while, not knowing what to say. At this time, any explanation or cover-up would be an excuse. Even if he were to pledge his determination, it would be meaningless. Just like what Venerable Lord Snow had said. No matter how unpleasant the words were, they were not as cruel as the reality. The reality was so close, one could only face it on their own. You may leave. The man in white flicked his sleeves and said faintly, I'm telling you for the last time. Think about it carefully. If you give up on yourself, no one can help you. Perhaps the next time we meet, you won't have the right to call me second brother anymore. If that day really comes, don't blame anyone. It's all your own choice. The expression on Venerable Lord Saber's face was uncertain, constantly changing. The strong sense of bitterness had never been as clear as it was today. Yin Yang had turned into the wind and left in time, avoiding the fatal crisis. He was extremely grateful. Yin Yang had already made some predictions during this trip, and had tried his best to overestimate the other party's ability. However, he had never expected that this person's ability would be at such a level, possessing such earth-shattering power. In just a snap of a finger, he had been annihilated twice in an instant. It was truly remarkable and terrifying. After walking far away, Yun Yang suddenly recalled that it was not the first time he had experienced such an aura. The battle at Tianxian Cliff that day seemed to have been accompanied by an extremely chilly airflow from the very beginning. There was even snow and ice falling. The feeling was extremely similar to what he felt today. The extremely chilly aura was also familiar. Could it be that this man in white was also one of the murderers who had attacked Tianxian Cliff back then? Yun Yang's killing intent flashed wildly. After such a long time, there was finally another person who had emerged after He Hanqing. Finally, I found another murderer from back then. No matter who you are, no matter what cultivation base you have, since you've come to Tiantang City, then, don't go back anymore. Repent in the netherworld. Lei Dongtian was still immersed in the dream of love that he had weaved. Through repeated hypnosis, he felt that he had truly fallen deeply in love with these two girls. His passion was unwavering, and his infatuation would never change. If it were not for his cultivation journey, he would even be willing to die for these two girls. Although he was only looking at the portraits, he could feel that he had been with these two girls for a very, very long time, and he longed to have them forever, never to be separated. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I love you both. However, I want to destroy you both with my own hands, to destroy you both, to make you both wish you were dead, to be consigned to eternal damnation. I'm really helpless about this. There is a way to satisfy both sides in this world, to not let down cultivation and not to let down love. Lei Dongtian felt remorseful, feeling as if his intestines had been twisted and turned, lost in his own thoughts. I'm actually a Casanova. It was at this moment. Outside the window, the sound of the wind surged violently. A hurricane broke through the window of Lei Dongtian's room with a loud bang. Lei Dongtian saw the sudden change, but he did not panic. His hands made a circle abruptly, and a misty green air force appeared, enveloping everything in the room. Following that, he roared and was ready to counterattack. Unexpectedly, the hurricane suddenly disappeared, leaving only an illusory shadow floating quietly in the sky outside the window. It floated here and there, without any substance. "Young Master Lei?" A strange voice spoke. Seeing this, Lei Dongtian naturally knew who was coming. Lei Dongtian gritted his teeth. "Are you Lord Supreme Wind, whose name is known throughout the Tianxian continent?" Chapter 335. The strange voice chuckled faintly and said, "Young Master Lei has indeed inquired about me. With such a profound cultivation base, you are still so cautious. The descendant of the Lei family is indeed remarkable." Lei Dongtian snorted and said, "I wonder what Lord Supreme Wind wishes to do by visiting so late at night." A loud thud could be heard. Old Mu barged into the room. Seeing the scene before him, he could not help but be stunned, and was about to rush forward. Lei Dongtian stretched out his hand to stop Old Mu. "Don't be impatient. Let's observe the situation quietly." "Ha ha." Lord Supreme Wind let out a relaxed chuckle. "Young Master Lei is still the most sensible one. Although I'm not your opponent in a real fight, it's difficult for you to make me stay. Instead of fighting in vain, it's better to talk calmly." Lei Dongtian snorted, and extended his hand to pull a chair behind him. He sat down facing the window and said faintly, "As mentioned earlier, Lord Supreme Wind has come to visit in the middle of the night. Is there anything I can help you with?" "There's no need to help." The blurry figure of Lord Supreme Wind's voice carried a hint of amusement. "But there are a few requests." Lei Dongtian sneered. "A few? Please speak." Lord Supreme Wind said faintly, "The first thing is, I'm rather interested in the cultivation method of the Bound of Universe's Lei family. I'd like to learn a thing or two from young Lord Lei. If young Lord Lei is willing to teach me, it would be even better." Lei Dongtian's handsome face twisted as he laughed weirdly. "Hehehe. You wish?" At this moment he could already be sure of the current situation. He had been betrayed. He had been betrayed by the people from his own realm. Completely betrayed. He had never mentioned the Bound of Universe's Lei family before this, not even to Yin Yang. However, this Lord Supreme Wind before him had exposed Lei Dongtian's biggest secret the moment he opened his mouth. If it was not the people from the Bound of Universe who had betrayed him, what else could it be? The look in Lei Dongtian's eyes was bone-chilling. Supreme Wind is a straightforward man, going straight to the target's request. However, before I respond to your request, I'd like to ask you a question. I wonder who told you about the name of the Bound of Universe's Lei family? Or should I say, where did you get this information from?" Lord Supreme Wind said calmly. Young Lord Lei, although I'm the one who needs your help first, I've already repaid you by giving you the 5 words of the Bound of Universe's Lei family. You asking me like this has turned into you asking me for a favor. Since our positions have been swapped, shouldn't young Lord Lei show more sincerity? Lei Dongtian snorted. How dare you? What else do you want? Lord Supreme Wind said. I've been paying attention to young Lord Lei for a long time. I'm touched by young Lord Lei's fondness for the 2 ladies. Based on the principle of fulfilling your wishes, I'm willing to return these 2 ladies to young Lord Lei. In return, young Master Lei should give us some unimportant things as a token of appreciation. Lei Dongtian's face darkened. What do you want? Tell me. Resources such as heaven and earth treasures are not in my eyes. However, the praxis of 7 emotions that young Lord is cultivating now. Lord Supreme Wind chuckled strangely. I'm very interested. This sincerity is more than enough. Ha ha ha. Lei Dongtian chuckled strangely without warning. As he laughed, he shook his head. I really don't know where your courage comes from. I really don't know who told you about these ridiculous things. Also, where do you get your confidence from? How dare you come here and clamor at me so brazenly? Lei Dongtian's gaze was filled with mockery and pity, as it focused on the blurry silhouette outside the window. Perhaps it's a coincidence that you know about the existence of the Bound of Universe, and the name of the Bound of Universe's Lei family. However, you don't know what kind of existence the Lei family is, do you? Outside the window, Supreme Wind said faintly. I don't need to know so much. I only need to ensure that I can grow stronger as soon as possible. For Yutong, for the people of the world, I will do whatever it takes. His speech was filled with the generosity and boldness of a loyal man, as if he was speaking the truth with certainty. Ha ha ha. Lei Dongtian guffawed again, but this time, his laughter was extremely hearty, as if he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. How F** King great. I almost believed it. He laughed and said in a faint voice. Before this, I've never thought that there would be such a strong organization in this world that could actually achieve such an impossible thing. Lord Supreme Wind said darkly. Oh, what are you trying to say? Lei Dongtian said. Nothing much. I'm just praising the 4 Seasons Tower, the strongest force in this world. It's indeed true to its reputation. It's truly remarkable. The blurry silhouette outside the window seemed to waver as it spoke in a raspy voice. The 4 Seasons Tower. The 4 Seasons Tower is the biggest enemy of this reputed one's entire life. So what if this tower is powerful? Sooner or later, I will uproot this organization and completely destroy it. Lei Dongtian said mockingly. Is that so? Tell me, how stupid would I be if I believed you? Let me ask you one more thing. How can you say it with such certainty, as if it's true and you really think so? He sneered. The so-called annihilation of the 4 Seasons Tower. Does it mean that you want to annihilate yourself as well? Outside the window, Supreme Wind did not budge. He sneered and said, Young Lord Lei, have you not thought it through before you speak? If you haven't learned how to speak, this reputed one is willing to train you for a few days. Take it as an additional reward for the cultivation method you've given me. Lei Dongtian was unprecedentedly enraged. When the other party said this, the confidence that was faintly revealed made the rage within him burn. He could no longer suppress it. Since he had said this, it meant that he knew the other party's background. However, just like what he had said, what could he do even if he knew the background? Who would believe such words, even if they were to spread? They would only think that he had spoken incoherently, and could not convey his meaning. Even if he were to announce this to the world, no one would believe him. Even if the few higher-ups of the imperial court of Yutong knew that it was true, they would not admit it, and would even help Supreme Wind to deny it. Lei Dongtian had thought that he had grasped the other party's biggest secret, and could make the other party refrain from taking action, or even exchange some terms. However, after a round of verbal confrontation, he finally realized that the trump card that he thought was worthless and useless in the other party's eyes. Forget it. I'm too lazy to argue with a muddle-headed person. These 2 terms are good enough. Supreme Wind, who was outside the window, said faintly, First, the Lei family's arcane skill. Second, the praxis of 7 emotions. As long as you hand them over quickly, the 2 women will return to your side tonight. What if I say no? Lei Dongtian's eyes were bloodshot. Not only was he angry, but his murderous intent was also brimming. This reputed one is pure, and will not lay a finger on young Lord Lei's women. However, there are many people on our side who like beauties very much. Supreme Wind, who was outside the window, said faintly. By then, I'm afraid that the primordial Ean of chaos that young Lord Lei has been planning for such a long time will be lost. Even if you manage to save them in the end, it will be meaningless. Therefore, young Lord Lei must think twice about the gains and losses. Lei Dongtian felt like he had been struck by lightning. The other party even knew the secret of the primordial Ean of chaos. I've really underestimated your foundation, Lei Dongtian said darkly. However, Lord Supreme Wind, aren't you being too certain and arrogant? I've been talking to you for such a long time. Is it really just a negotiation? Supreme Wind, who was by the window, was stunned for a moment. He then said faintly, could it be that young Lord Lei still has a trick to confine the space between heaven and earth? I don't need to confine the space between heaven and earth to deal with you. I only need to do a little trick. Before his words echoed in the air, Lei Dongtian had already flown out like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, the strong wind howled and green smoke rose. A cloud of greenish-black air had enveloped the entire sky above the inn. The sound of the wind could be heard as the blurry silhouette by the window turned into a gust of wind. A voice filled with confidence echoed, young Lord Lei, you'll be obedient. What is this? In the sky, the movement of the wind that had been scattered suddenly became unusually chaotic. No matter how the wind in the sky dispersed, there was still a layer of faint fluorescence flickering on the shadow of the gust. Lei Dongtian let out a long howl and flew out with his sword. This is the little toy I've left on you to thank you for giving me such a long time just now. It's not a shame that you've fallen into my trap. Stay here. As his voice rang out, the sword moved. The sword light was like a dragon as it whizzed out. A strong gust of wind rose abruptly and soared upwards. So what if you've done something to it? Do you think you can still catch up to me? How arrogant. Amidst the howling of the wind, it had already risen into the sky in the blink of an eye, speeding away. Lei Dongtian fell back to the ground after missing his attack. Arrogant? Let's see who's the arrogant one. Are you ready? The last sentence was directed at Old Mu, who was beside him. I'm ready, Old Mu replied solemnly. Go after it. The effect of that thing can only last for 2 hours. If we can't find it within 2 hours, it'll disappear automatically, and all our efforts will be in vain. Both of them did not delay as they turned into a ray of black light and dashed out of the inn simultaneously. At this moment, there were still many wind shadows scattered in all directions in the sky, but they disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Lei Dongtian's movement was extremely fast. He was like a ray of flowing light, like a white steed flitting across a crevice. This was enough to prove that he had actually held back a lot of his strength in the short fight with Supreme Wind just now. Lei Dongtian was also a person with deep foresight, having a deep understanding of the current situation. There was no meaning in simply capturing Supreme Wind. Even if he were to kill him, it would only be detrimental to the current situation, and would not help at all. This was because the most crucial issue now was the safety of Jilingxi and Yurulan. Chapter 336. Lei Dongtian had already made up his mind. As long as he had the 2 ladies in his hands, he could plan and arrange the follow-up actions in a leisurely manner. Or he could simply go back and use his family's power to come to Tianxian continent and uproot the Four Seasons Tower. On the other side, Old Mu had completely hidden himself in the night, deliberately paying attention to the blurry traces in the sky as he sprinted. The wind in the sky circled around Tiantang City twice, gathering and dispersing at times. As time passed, Lei Dongtian and Old Mu became more and more anxious. Seeing that more than half of the time limit had passed, the other party still refused to let his guard down. Supreme Wind was too cunning and cautious. To think that he would rather waste his own cultivation than to stop. He probably knew very well that once he stopped, he would be locked onto by Lei Dongtian, and fall into an extreme pursuit. Seeing that it was disadvantageous for him to continue the stalemate, Lei Dongtian made another move. He unsheathed his sword and attacked. Soaring in the air, his sword soared into the sky. The majestic sword current immediately shattered the blurry shadows in the air. As he moved, Old Mu did the same thing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sword light danced like electric snakes, flashing continuously in the air. Both of them were the pinnacle of Tianxian continent's powerhouses. As they exerted their full strength, the whole of Tiantang City was shocked into silence. Since when did Tiantang City have these two superb experts? This was a battle of sword energy that was thousands of feet high in the sky. This was simply a dream battle that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. With the cultivation base of Venerable Lord Saber and Venerable Lord Snow, they were naturally alarmed at the first instance. Both of them stood at the top of the tower, looking at the crisscrossing sword light in the sky. Both of them felt a chill run down their spines. Experts. They are actually pinnacle experts. Venerable Lord Snow sucked in a breath of cold air. Venerable Lord Saber's face was pale. Second brother, if you were to face these two people, how confident are you? Venerable Lord Snow chuckled bitterly. I have 100% confidence to escape. Venerable Lord Saber's face twitched. Confidence to escape? Does that not mean that I can't beat them head-on? Venerable Lord Saber did not dare to ask this directly. He only prayed in his heart that these two people would not be the Four Seasons Tower's enemies. Otherwise, if they were to fight, second brother would be able to escape unscathed, but he was destined to perish here. Who is he fighting with? Isn't this battle too sudden? Venerable Lord Saber was getting more and more frightened as he watched. There are many capable people and experts in this world. Just because you don't know them doesn't mean they don't exist. Venerable Lord Snow sighed. Could it be Supreme Wind? Venerable Lord Saber had a sudden thought. Venerable Lord Snow looked at his fifth brother mockingly and said faintly, Lao Wu, you think too much. If Supreme Wind had the ability to fight both of them at the same time, his cultivation base would at least be on par with Ling Xiaozui's. He would have long gone to the Four Seasons Tower's headquarters. Venerable Lord Saber was embarrassed. You should hurry up and focus on watching the battle. Look carefully. The person who is fighting with the two of them is obviously not using his full strength. His whole body has turned into a ball of hazy light spots. This kind of magical technique is really unheard of. The man in white, Venerable Lord Snow, sighed and said, It's a pity that we can't watch the battle of such experts from a close distance. Otherwise, it would be greatly beneficial. Venerable Lord Saber agreed wholeheartedly. The man in white, Venerable Lord Snow, frowned and pondered, racking his brains. Who were these three people in front of him? How could they possess such earth-shattering power? It was already strange to have such an ability. What was even stranger was that in his impression, there was no such pinnacle of heaven mystic experts that matched this. This was really strange, even more strange. Could it be that there were pinnacle experts in the martial world that he did not know? Right at this moment, a sudden roar resounded in the sky, shaking the whole of Tiantang City. The ball of light spots suddenly scattered, a relatively intact ball falling abruptly. The two beams of sword light that had the upper hand did not want to let it go. They followed closely behind, like two flood dragons, shaking their heads and wagging their tails as they swooped down swiftly and violently. Both sides, one fleeing and the other chasing, were extremely fast to the extreme. Their eyes had just caught a glimpse of it, but it was almost right in front of them. Then, the ball of light suddenly disappeared without a trace, leaving only a panicked voice. Lord Venerable Lord Saber. Before Venerable Lord Saber and his servant could react to the meaning of the sentence, they could only feel a gust of wind sweeping past their heads. Two beams of sword light were coming towards them, coming at them at an incredible speed, without the slightest hesitation, just because they were in front of them. Of course, Lei Dongtian and his servant would not have the slightest hesitation, because both of them had clearly heard the words, Lord Venerable Lord Saber. Recalling the pinnacle experts of the Four Seasons Tower that Yun Yang had mentioned, saber, sword, snow, frost, and ice. How could they not understand that among the two people in front of them, one of them must be Venerable Lord Saber of the Four Seasons Tower? At this moment, both of them had the urge to burst into tears. After all this hard work, they were almost exhausted to death. Finally, the clouds parted and the moon shone brightly. They had found their base camp. At least, they had found someone who could fight them head-on. This was already too difficult for them. Lei Dongtian was even a little complacent at this moment. If it were not for his sudden whim of using his sword energy to continuously injure Supreme Wind, he might have been able to endure until the time limit of 2 hours had passed. The arrogant one would have been him. How fortunate! How fortunate that he had forced him to give up. Venerable Lord Saber called out instinctively. Who is it? Facing the oncoming sword that was like a raging dragon, not only Venerable Lord Saber, but even Venerable Lord Snow could only circulate his cultivation to resist it. Otherwise, the other party had no signs of stopping. Yet he had been beheaded in such an inexplicable manner. No matter what, he had to fight back. Venerable Lord Saber roared and struck with his saber. Venerable Lord Snow waved his sleeves and a ball of snowflake-like silver light filled the space in front of him. He retreated hastily and cried out, "Which friend is it? This is a misunderstanding. Please hold your thunder for a moment, we will explain ourselves." Lei Dongtian could only feel a sudden chill in front of him, as his entire body felt like it was about to be frozen. Both he and Old Mu had exhausted too much of their energy previously. The sword was thousands of feet high in the air, continuously slashing and attacking with hundreds of swords. That was a genuine extreme consumption. His cultivation base was exhausted, and he was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Lei Dongtian's wish had been fulfilled. He quickly took out a few medicinal pills and threw them into his mouth. His cheeks were bulging as he swallowed them with great effort. He did not even have the time to maintain his image, let alone speak. It was the same situation on Old Mu's side. His cultivation base was slightly higher than his young lord's, but only by a little. In addition, the cultivation method that he was cultivating was definitely inferior to Lei Dongtian's in terms of effectiveness. While Lei Dongtian was struggling to hold on, Old Mu was in a similar situation. However, his situation was even worse because his storage ring had been given to Yun Yang. He was hurriedly taking out medicinal pills from his robe with one hand, but before he could do so, Venerable Lord Saber's saber had already arrived in front of him. The saber's wind was sharp and deadly. Old Mu was enraged. Holding his sword with one hand, he slashed down with all his remaining strength. At this moment, Old Mu was truly enraged. He had almost exhausted all the remaining spiritual energy in his body. The edge of his sword was suddenly surrounded by a brilliance that was similar to a burning black flame. Clang! Venerable Lord Saber let out a loud cry and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His body rolled out like a rubber ball. This was the roof of the Tower to Heaven Inn. Venerable Lord Saber had rolled to the outermost edge of the roof. His head hit the protective low wall with a loud thud. For a moment, he felt dizzy, but he bounced back again. With a loud crack, a large piece of the low wall was broken and fell down with a loud thud. Along the way, it was unknown what it had hit. A voice filled with shock and anger rang out from an unknown floor. It was filled with uncontrollable rage. F***ck your mother. F***ck. What kind of bastard is this? He's courting death. At this moment, Lei Dongtian, who had caught his breath, once again struck out with his sword like lightning, engaging in a battle with Venerable Lord Snow. Venerable Lord Saber was slashed by Old Mu's sword, rolling on the ground like a gourd. When he finally stood up, he could still see stars in front of him, swaying here and there. It was as if there were 17 or 18 people fighting at the same time, each of them having a halo above their heads. He shook his head hard, trying to regain his clarity. However, he suddenly saw the black-clothed guy rushing towards him again. Venerable Lord Saber snorted. He could not care less about the fact that his mind had yet to fully recover. He leaped up and disappeared with a loud clang. A sharp saber appeared in the air and slashed down fiercely. Old Mu had already swallowed the medicinal pills, but the interval was too short. He had not even recovered a breath of vitality. He was in an awkward situation where his old strength had been exhausted and new strength had yet to be generated. For a moment, He could only dodge the continuous saber strikes of Venerable Lord Saber, feeling that his lungs were about to explode. With his cultivation base, he could not believe that he had been forced into such a state by such an ant. It was an extreme shame that could never be washed away. Lei Dongtian's sword light was like a colorful falling flower, circling around Venerable Lord Snow as he attacked with his sword. The medicinal pills had begun to take effect in his dantian. As his vitality gradually recovered, he gradually gained the upper hand. His attacks were like waves. Venerable Lord Snow's snowflake blades danced in the air, trying his best to parry the attacks. He instinctively thought that this matter was just a misunderstanding with the opponent's strength. If he were to offend him, there would be no end of trouble. Therefore, even though he could see that Lei Dongtian was exhausted and was barely holding on, Venerable Lord Snow still did not take the opportunity to attack. He was only limited to defending and explaining. It's a misunderstanding. Sir, this is really a misunderstanding. We're not enemies. It's a misunderstanding. We've been framed. We're just here to enjoy the scenery. It's a misunderstanding. It's my birthday. I've grown another year older. Updated in advance. Gathering with my family, friends, classmates, and comrades at night. Unknowingly, this was his 8th birthday in the world of web literature. Feng Lingtian was truly 8 years old now. 8 years of trials and tribulations. He had walked with everyone. Suddenly, he felt a little emotional. How many 8 years could there be in a life? How many 8 years could there be in a professional life? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.